I'll check it right now. The only way to. Oh, you don't know. Can't let it grip out, do me? He's got the tie though. I didn't even wear a tie.
You wear a tie, but you still got.
Yeah, yeah.
We have about
You see, and this is what happens when you retire. When you don't have a job, all you gotta do is get yourself up and get dressed.
Yeah, and I mean that's. Oh, I mean 500 is.
Okay.
You can write a report based on what he said. 500 responses. I mean that's. I mean, this will make a much more accurate.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Oh, sure. Exactly. Right. And so it's in a small community, 500 and going. You know, we're in that.
I didn't read that. Where is it?
I hadn't looked, but he said.
Today's? I haven't read it. Is it,
I don't recognize the guy.
what's his name? It's not Geraldo, is it?
No.
Okay.
But this guy lives in Ashley Oaks.
Well, which phase?
I'm
It
more
doesn't
interested
say. It
Yeah.
just says
outside Blythewood. But that's good.
come in about 4 o'clock this morning.
I know it does. Hey, it's updating. It's about to die. I need to plug it in. There it is.
But it's on the front page. It gives his name. I'm assuming that's him in the wheelchair. I didn't get to. My phone doesn't like to give me full access, but it's when it loads. See it right down here. Still haunted by.
No, I don't know. He must be in the main
I don't
Ashley
know him
Oaks.
either.
Because I'm right off of Locklear Dirt Road.
Right.
Yeah. Morning, how are you? Outside, fruit and things. Yeah, donut, help yourself. Free stuff. Oh, I heard that on the,
Yeah, I just told Barbara.
Oh, yeah, okay. Krispy Kreme, wait.
Good. Glad to be here.
Handshakes are coming back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good.
That's my wife is like.
That's right. I'm better than what I was.
Hand ever again or something. I was like, what the hell?
I hope not. I hope these gentlemen don't go long. I'm happy, so they just want to run over it real quick. Hopefully not more than an hour and a half. Yeah, yeah. We're going to talk everything in the packet. No decisions, though. We're just going to mark up edits, changes, do the same. No. As we get to the line item, then somebody can speak out.
Didn't really get
Don's
you
done a good job with it.
involved in the earlier discussions of the budget.
Yeah.
I just had to kind of do it first myself and see how it was, but I wasn't intentionally leaving you out. But I'm happy to talk about any of it.
That makes sense.
All right.
And certainly moving forward.
That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do.
Handle
And
it
especially, yeah.
What?
No, yeah, well, because there's a couple of things in here that people may recuse themselves, whatever. Like when we talk about the high school, I'll leave. Well, because I have children in the high school, that one of them plays baseball. So how can I vote for the Diamond Invitational Tournament when my son's gonna be playing? So I'm just gonna, Blythewood. So I just feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, I hope so. There's Don right now. When Eddie comes back. Yeah.
Morning.
Okay, I'll call to order the Blythewood Town Council Budget Work Session number 1 at the Manor. Today's Thursday, April 22nd, and the time is 9:03 a.m. Is Ms. Cowan here? Sarah Lamb, would you please call the roll?
Here. Present.
Here.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Yarborough, was the notification and posting of the meeting agenda accomplished in accordance with state law? Thank you. Gentlemen, before you is today's agenda, where we'll simply talk about the proposed budget with no action. I will have open citizen comments, though. That would be one addition under, let's make Roman numeral 2, 3, let's make Roman numeral 3, 4, and let's put Roman numeral 2 as open citizen comments. I've had a request. Any other changes?
With that amendment, I make a motion we approve.
Second.
Yes, ma'am. Probably motion seconded to approve today's agenda as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask your mercies and your healing on this nation, Lord. We ask that you calm the violence and that you implement peace throughout the land. Lord, we ask today for this meeting, your common sense, wisdom, and good judgment as we move forward with allocating the precious resources you've provided us to our town's business. We ask all these things in your Son's name, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, we'll begin councilman remarks. My left, your right. Councilman Larry Griffin, sir.
Good morning. I don't have anything to say. We're just going to move forward. I appreciate everybody that's here, and it's ready to get this done. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Sloan Griffin.
Good morning to everyone. I am in the same space as Councilman Larry Griffin. I'm glad to see each and every one of you out here. To the viewers on YouTube, thank you for joining in with us this morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Ballman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. I'll relinquish my time also this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Don Brock.
Good morning. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Those at home, thank you for tuning in. I will continue this trend, and I will yield the remainder of my time. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you, sir. Mayor's remarks, likewise, I'll do the same. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully, we'll get through this quickly. We won't be here half the day, and entertain any requests from the council throughout the process. Okay, I'll move to part 2. Ms. Roxanne Hennigan has asked to address us today in open citizen comments, so ma'am, the floor is yours. Morning.
No, Steve, check the mic.
Just pull the mic closer to you so that, yes, ma'am, thank you.
I don't think it's on.
It's the NAACP. Unlike George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Breonna Taylor, and the recent 60-year-old Michaela, I survived. I was brutally beaten by the police as well. And as you know, our mayor, he has, our governor, I'm sorry, he has allocated $12 million for therapeutic. And I believe that together in our town here in Blythewood, where Mayor Franklin is the mayor, that we can together have an ethics and resolution team. And I'm asking all here on the city council if we can include an ethics and resolution team for the George Floyd Law Act in this budget. And I will ask for me, Roxanne Hennigan, to be leader and a starter in that on behalf of our community and our voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Have
ma'am.
a thankful Thursday.
Thank you. Any comments, council members? Hearing none, we will
Miss-
move to,
I'll
oh, sir,
make-
go ahead,
I'm sorry.
Councilman Griffin.
Ms. Hennigan, I understand you're asking there. You have my number, you can reach out to me anytime, and we can talk about that.
Absolutely. I look forward to reading the George Floyd Act when it's passed and presented, and we will certainly engage. Thank you. Item number 3 today, discussion topics. We'll move right into the fiscal year 2022 budget. Mr. Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd just go over our schedule for the budget moving towards approval. So today we have a work session, and then we'll have a second work session on May 4th here at the Manor at 9 a.m. And then the first reading is May 24th, and second reading on June 27th, which will be a public hearing. So just want to start, I met with many of the council members and mayor to go over the budget, so I think everyone is familiar with, and what we went over with council is what the mayor, what you approved tentatively moving forward. So that is what I'll start off going with tonight, first. And if you look in your packet, we'll start at the first page is revenue. And just want to hit some highlights on the revenues, particularly just the timing of passing a budget versus when these large revenues come in, and the insurance tax collection program. It comes in very late in June, but it is a significant portion of the budget. But we budgeted $400,000 for that, and that's based on fiscal year 20. And so that's what we think that's a reasonable amount there. Moving down, other highlights, building permits and fees are down this year. So we just allocated for that by reducing the amount than what we budgeted the current year. Business licenses, you'll see currently this number is shown as, in the current year, as 55,821, but the deadline was April 15th, and we have had several since then that will be deposited in the bank this week, so I think we're in good shape. So you'll see there's 90,000 in keeping with our current year budget. I think that should remain consistent. For outside business licenses, as you know, that is outside contractors pay double the amount. You'll see that the current year, it is very high relative to what was budgeted, but that is due to the school, and both schools, the one Bethlehem being constructed, and then the construction project at Blythewood High School had significant business licenses, but that will not be replicated. We don't anticipate we're going to have that coming, so we couldn't budget based on that. So you'll see it's the same as our current budget. And just so you understand, the building permits for those schools all go through the state. So unfortunately, we don't get the building permits for schools. So that's why there's basically kind of a discrepancy between business license and building permits. And then franchise fees, they are due on June 30th. And so we budgeted based on what we got in fiscal year 20. So that's our best estimate at this point. Then moving down, state accommodations tax to general fund. This is by statute, just so, so the first 25,000 of what we get for state accommodations tax goes to the general fund, plus 5% of the remaining after that 25,000. So that's where that number comes from. Any questions on revenues?
Mr. Mayor, is this the time where we would make recommendations, changes, or just
Anytime.
questions?
Yes, sir,
Oh,
anytime.
throughout, so it's more of an open dialogue
Yes.
format?
Mhm.
Okay.
Workshop, yep.
The only question I have, Ms. Williamson, I think we talked a little bit about this, was online. I'm going to reference the last three numbers, 099, the park and amphitheater rentals. We've got budgeted $5,000. Why do we not put that in the manor budget under their revenue? I kind of look at the manor and the park as kind of one and the same. And it would just make sense to put that under the manor revenue, manor park revenue versus town general fund revenue.
Well, I can certainly look at that, but we have it separate throughout the budget as far as expenses, that there's park expenses versus manor expenses. So it's separated now, but we can certainly look at that. But I think we should look at it on both sides, and so that
Okay, well, if there's park expenses in our
Right.
budget, that should also be transferred.
right, so
to the
then we
manor.
can look at it
Yeah,
both.
okay, all right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. No more questions on revenue. We'll move on to expenditures. Governing body, pretty consistent with the current year budget. Under miscellaneous, down there near the bottom, we just highlight that we have budgeted some upgrade for the audiovisual here and a laptop. And so we would possibly look at having an audiovisual tech to attend the meetings as well. But I think all that can be covered with this amount. Moving forward, let's see, down in administration, you'll see that there's, we put in there a 1% cost of living increase for the employee. These are just the administration employees, so not the entire.
Mr. Williamson, before we get into that.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back to the election expenses?
Yes, sir.
I know you've got 500 here. I know we do have an election coming up.
Yeah.
Is it going to be listed under an expenditure, or is it all, does it all we pay? Is 500? Okay. Okay. I didn't realize. I thought it was much more than that. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilman Griffin.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question on miscellaneous on 290. When we met, and I'm trying to look at the figures, did that include that roughly that increase for AV Tech? Or
Yeah.
was that just, it wasn't? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Okay. That's
Yep.
right.
That's what we talked about in our session, was 10,000.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do I need to
Well, the
update you
tech
guys?
charges hourly, right, not a salary? Okay.
Yes.
But, okay.
So the whole, can I give an explanation
Go
on
ahead,
that?
please, absolutely.
So the whole AV Tech piece, just looking at, what we need to enhance our capabilities here, so that folks at home can hear, can see what we're doing and work on things and interact a little bit more. Just by talking to some professionals around the area, those prices vary. We looked at like $25 an hour. Most of your AV techs are getting $100 an hour. And that's a cheap rate when it comes to AV side. So that's why I asked for a $10,000 increase in that pot to kind of cushion that for our meetings not just town council, but planning commission, all of them.
Yeah, that's absolutely, sounds like an RFP coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we,
Okay. Yeah, we can
Okay.
do that.
Um,
And just
All right,
to
well-
echo the words of Councilman Brock, when he and I met to go over this recently, just because you budget it doesn't necessarily mean you'll spend it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a
Absolutely.
holder.
That's
It's
correct.
a space holder for the resource, which I agree with. So, yeah, I don't object to scratching
we'll-
through that and adding 10,000.
all right, yeah, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir, Councilman Brock.
one question, Ms. Emery. The $500 for election expenses, is that paid to Richland County Election Commission? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. I move into the administration. We added the 1.3 cost of living increase, and then just budgeted the 3% merit increase there. The other big increase you'll see is travel and training for staff. I looked at where staff needed to be professionally and the conferences they need to attend, the certifications they need to obtain, and calculated all that, and it came to this figure, 11,513, which I think is certainly an increase from current year, but it's based on the need to have serious professional development for all staff, and you'll see that in other portions of the budget.
Councilman Griffin, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I didn't know if you was finished on the section.
Yes.
I'll let you go forward and finish, and then I'll come back and ask a question on the administration.
Okay. Yeah, I just trying to kind of highlight things that I think would catch your interest. Let's see, we added a line for advertising and marketing, and so that is to cover for anticipated expenses, but this does need to increase based on the current draft contract with MPA Strategies that, all right, so the total amount is anticipated to be 48,000 based on monthly, but in some of the work would be done tourism related and some not. So just to kind of split down the middle, not knowing yet how that would break down. So that is 50% of the total amount. And so that would need to increase from 21,600 to 24,000. And then just additional advertising that the town does. So
So this is
I would
the-
I would increase that to 30,000. I would recommend increasing that to 30,000.
That's fine, do that. And this is, where is the fee for the marketing firm? Is that gonna be elsewhere, or the 48,000, where did you put that?
Okay, so half of it is right here,
Okay, and the
and then
other
the other half in the state accommodations
Okay, that's what I
tax,
wanna
the
say. Thank you.
30%.
Perfect.
So, yeah, that's just
Okay,
not really sure how that's going to break down, but we need to specify that and have them coming out of two different funds.
sure.
So that's how we budgeted it for right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Williamson?
Yes.
Half of the, of MPA's 21.6 is 43.2, which would be 48,000 minus 4,800 that would be allocated to the manor, correct?
That's right.
Yep, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So that's how you.
I guess that's
how
right,
you
yeah.
get- well,
That's right, we
yeah.
did talk about that. So we can either leave it here as it is and just add 4,800 because that was the additional amount added to the contract based on the work for marketing the manor, and then add that to the manor. So, yeah, we can do that as far as keep this at 25,000 and then add the 4,800 and make that up at the manor budget, at that fund.
Just for those watching at home and the general audience, what we're trying to do, in the past, we've always commingled the monies with the manor and the town's picked up the deficit because we run a deficit over here. We want to separate those out specifically in funding and in proceeds or revenues gained. so we can see two things: how we need to monetize and improve the use of the manor, and how effective our marketing strategy with our firm will be when we see the increase in revenues based on the skills that that professional brings. Okay, thank you. Mr. Williamson, continue, please. Okay.
I don't have anything
Yeah.
else, any highlights here, so any questions y'all have?
Yes, sir. One question, sir.
Yes.
And we talked about in the pre-meet about adding and this may go back more towards the mayor being the CEO, adding a staff member, in the staff salary column, and that would serve as a, customer service rep from Winsboro Water on this side. That will be tied into their system, to start, stop, collect, put in work order tickets, take citizen phone calls on this side, and address those concerns that most citizens have conveyed to us as council and mayor, not being able to get anyone on the phones, not being able to just get responses, not being able to get issues addressed in a timely manner. So I know we talked about that piece. And it was a letter sitting up here that I got from Winsboro that gave me what I was, waiting for, was salary numbers and job descriptions. So for the record, I'll turn this over to you after the meeting to go over that. But that increase of what I asked about a $30,000 salary piece was correct.
Okay.
For that one person.
I think we need to have Winsboro Water here in front of us to answer questions before we do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can just make a note of that and then try to have them here.
I mean, I agree with the frustration, but we have paying customers.
Right.
That's a service they should provide as an ombudsman, not the town. It should come from Winsboro Water
I
on
think
their
we
salary.
would need to really specify
Well,
who are they working for?
Yeah.
And,
So part of the conversation piece that I'm talking with you guys about was using part of the franchise fees. So some of the increase that we got on franchise fees was taking that back, using that as salary,
I
to
agree.
kind of
Where the money-
commingle
yeah,
with
absolutely.
them on that. So that's where that increase of that 30,000 would come from, is on the franchise fees.
I think we get them here.
Yeah.
We need to resource that, not us, but.
and just so it's clear, the franchise fees all go into the general fund.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not specified out, these fees pay for this and this, so. But certainly recognizing that there is an increase in franchise fees.
So in some of my conversations, I just recognize that, we get those franchise fees, and, how we're using them to give back and benefit to the customer on this end. What can we do to supplement and help out on that side?
Right.
And I know they will entertain any conversation. I've been in plenty of conversations just about it, to make sure that I'm not going cuckoo on talking about this and just seeing where it is. But I do know that we got an increase in franchise fees. So just the logic of me thinking about it and some of the issues that we could have someone on this side that would help out on that piece, and using that as a supplement. So folks that got that increase see where their money is going.
Yeah, I think it'd just be good to, start a draft job description and.
I got all of that right
Okay,
here. So
great.
that's what I
Right.
was waiting for from Winsboro, and they mailed it to me. So I'll make
Okay.
sure that you get that.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
And they also have a new mayor who I need to
Yes.
Right,
talk to.
and new town administrator,
Yes.
town manager. Yeah.
It's a great stopgap. It's a great idea, but we don't need to use our resources for it. Winsboro
We're
needs to,
serving them.
They're already receiving payment from our customers. They're not providing the quality service.
Right.
And we need to bring it to their attention. Failing that, I would support what we're talking about doing here. But if you're hiring somebody on a full-time salary basis with benefits and everything else to do a Winsboro job, so you see the disconnect. Yes, ma'am. You have a question, Ms. Ball? Can you come up there so people at home can hear you, please?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That would be
And
great for them to come talk about.
Yeah. I'm sorry, it will solve those issues. And they updated me and showed me that process on those meters as well, as, what it will do on our side. So we are the first pilot piece for that program when it gets in place. So there's a lot of moving apples in this thing and just trying to really, provide some benefit to the customer on this end, so, and answer those tough questions that they have.
Councilman Brock?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It may come as a small surprise to you, but I actually agree with what you said as far as putting the onus on the town of Winsboro.
At first, to see.
Well,
Sounds like they're being
it-
responsive.
It
and I'm
also,
glad to hear
it
that.
also potentially opens
Yeah.
Pandora's box in that any utility or
Right.
service provider that comes into town would expect the same thing. If and when we approach the city of Columbia about providing franchise fees for their water, they would expect the same thing, potentially Fairfield or whomever, any other utilities or service providers. So I think that if an entity is not providing the services that we have signed up for, then they should be held accountable. It's not our responsibility to use our resources to provide some sort of a go-between. So, yeah, I think that could be problematic in the future. But I would definitely love to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Question, franchise fees, what's the definition and what is the whole meaning of using those franchise fees for the record?
Well, go ahead. You're the administrator.
Well, I mean, the franchise fees allow them to operate on town property in the right of way. And so that's what they're paying for, is the right to have their utility run throughout the town. That's
And that's cable, water.
right.
So it's
Anyone who's operating,
Gas.
It's essentially like a small business license.
Yeah.
right. I mean, they're given access, essentially.
And typically, what do we use that for?
It just goes all into the general fund, so it's not specified that franchise fees are paying
A lot
for.
of these expenses.
So it just goes into the total revenue. It doesn't have a separate expense associated with the franchise fee.
And thank you for explaining. I just want the general public to know
Oh, yeah,
what that's
yeah.
for, because there's a lot of questions that we get that money and, we're paying for it. All of us are paying for it. Miss Julie?
But it's not earmarked. I think his point for the people was franchise fees don't come in and you have to spend them in a directed manner. They come in and the town decides where you spend that money. And there's more than just one utility, there's all over. And we have Columbia, people, the water in the south, people who live up in the north of the town have Winsboro water. So it's hard to split that out. But absolutely concur. Once we have Winsboro here to explain their quality control improvements, then we can move forward. And failing that, I'm with Councilman Griffin. Maybe we do need to either increase somebody's salary already on the town staff to take that additional duty on, or possibly do it ourselves. But I would want to do that as a last resort, because you're paying for that service, and you ought to be able to get what you're asking for. Yes, please, Mr. McHenry.
That is the local government, it comes from the General Assembly that they allocate to local governments, and it varies from year to year. So we don't know exactly, but we're tracking on their budget to see what that would be. But it's not very clear based on that description, but that's my understanding. It's just a local government fund. I don't know, Julie's going to give you kind of the history of it.
We can bring that statute back to the next workshop, so we can address that. Yeah. Yeah.
Has that number steadily increased over the year, the amount we've received? I'm just curious. It could be tied to population growth.
I think it is. It is.
That'd be my
It
speculation.
is tied to population growth.
Okay.
But once the new census figures come out, a lot of things are gonna change,
Yep.
because they base it on that. Okay, any other questions? We still have page 3 of expenses.
Yes, and at the top, there's community promotions.
Yeah.
And you see an increase there, just based on what we have spent so far on community promotions. It includes preparing to put American flags and wreaths on all the, go throughout all the cemeteries throughout the town for Memorial Day.
And again, that's just a placeholder.
Correct. And also just something to consider is for movies in the park, as a possibility for a need to increase that but that's on the agenda for Monday. But, so that number may increase based on what council wants
Yeah, I
to do with
spoke to
that.
Mr. Williamson about that, by the way, just for council's edification. It's not really a tourism issue, so we're not supposed to use the H-tax, A-tax for it, but it would be a community promotions event. So that's why we put it here, if we're going to vote to continue that. And of course, this Memorial Day, we're trying to do things for local churches, recognize veterans on Memorial Day where they were laid to rest, and we'll put small flags. I wanted wreaths originally, but wreaths are very, very expensive, so flags. Okay?
All right. I see an increase in, for website maintenance, and that's just based on a proposal from the company that does our website, Revise, that the annual maintenance fee is a slight increase, and then they have proposed to add some additional services to the website, as well as just kind of updating overall the appearance of it, but also adding a feature of forms, fillable forms, and we'll explore that more with them, but things like job applications, it would be where you just fill out online, and when the applicant clicks submit, it goes directly to staff and in a clear form. I mean, it's, right now, it's sort of antiquated in what we get when people fill out like citizen inquiry forms, and looking at a broader, how we could expand that to permits and things like that. So there's an additional proposed cost for that. Just kind of bring the website up to modern day. All right, moving on to legal and professional on page 4. Pretty consistently the same. There was an increase on outside counsel, just as the town embarks on larger projects, whether it be purchases of property, it's just going to be a need for potentially some outside counsel to bring their expertise. So there's an increase there. Okay, IT support. One thing that I talked about on Councilman Sloan Griffin and the mayor about GIS and mapping. If we did go to something where we would put mapping on as part of the website, and we have an agreement with Richland County GIS, and they said they could provide, they could work with us to do these things, but of course they would charge for something that's sort of beyond the normal part of the agreement. And I haven't gotten a quote on that because we really haven't gotten into specifics about what exactly we would want. But if we're looking at something related to annexation, then I certainly call on them. And just to give you a quick update, they have provided some maps for us recently and incorporated the Fairfield County parcels as well. So we do have a zoning map that's not 100% accurate, but they're working on it, and then some printable maps that they've done for us so far. But anyway, just wanted to see about increasing that to 60,000, from 55,000 to 60,000 to cover the GIS support potentially for this budget year. And then you see that down there, the Central Midlands Council of Governments contracted services will anticipate paying the majority of that bill on the next budget year. They've yet to actually create the agreements, but they're obviously working on this comprehensive plan currently. So, any questions on legal and professional? Right, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, move it up to accounting services. Oh, yeah, it's kind of out of order there. Yeah, correct, yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay?
Okay. Moving on to Public Works, and this is 3 employees in Public Works. Their salary consistent with what we did for the administration, with an increase for cost of living and a merit increase. Let's see, big highlights are the vehicle and equipment. Cecil, this truck needs to be replaced, so that's where the $25,000 is reflected. Maintenance and repair of Town Hall. We recently had someone go under the floor at the Hoffman House, and there's some concern about the electrical wiring there, so we were going to hire an electrician to go through there and just ensure that everything meets code. And so there's we added some for that amount.
And we'll have a running balance on that anyway, right?
Yes,
Don't we
from the
have-
capital improvement fund.
Quite a
Yes,
bit.
that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
Yeah, so could certainly draw on that. Let's see, the increase for signage is the Purple Heart sign posts. We have the signs, and we just need the posts to get them in the ground. And then if I could recommend an increase on miscellaneous for training that I had not added here previously, we missed that, of training of $750 for these 3 employees to give them an opportunity for some professional development. So I recommend increasing that to $750.
Previous line item, not this one down here.
No, well, I would say just keeping it as part of Public Works.
Okay, so
Put
$499,
$750
you're
and just
saying?
put a note in there that it's for training,
Okay.
or adding a line for training specifically.
Gotcha.
Mr. Mayor?
Please, Councilman Brock.
Okay, Mr. Williamson, so I have several items stored here from our conversations with you and Ms. Emery. Line 550, vehicles and equipment. We had, last year, we did budget for a new vehicle. We did not acquire it. I think it's pretty well established that we have to buy the new vehicle this year.
Correct.
So, okay, that's good. I fully support that.
Yes.
Next line item down, 351, maintenance and repair of Town Hall. I'm of the opinion that we increase that line item to at least $20,000, and here's why. It's an old home. Anytime we go digging, we know we're going to find something. And any repairs that need to be made, I feel like we need to make them now. It's going to be cheaper now. Prices only continue to go up. They don't go down, especially with contractors. And anything and everything we can find, I believe we just need to knock out. We've got the funds to do it. Let's repair our town hall and get it where it needs to be so that we don't have to make repairs for the next, hopefully, 5 or so years outside of general maintenance, HVAC, stuff like that. Beautification projects, 356, I also think we need to up that so that we can start beautifying our town. Our entrances need to become more beautiful, more appealing. We may be able to cover some of that with with A-tax and H-tax, I'm not exactly sure, possibly ARP funds, I'm not exactly sure, the restrictions there, but let's move forward, and I know that Mr. Cook had a plan to start beautifying, hold on a second, beautifying our town and make it more inviting. You know, the bridge railing is an opportunity to do that. Other areas around our signs. I did see the new painted signs, Miss Julie. They are very nice. Thank you for pointing that out. I probably would not have noticed. So, you know, upping that line item. And my last point, line 331, electricity, and I've got charging stations circled. We talked ad nauseum about this. I don't know about anyone else on council, but I think we have to get out of the business of maintaining and paying for charging stations. If local businesses want them, that's fine. That offers a business advantage for the hotels that have charging stations. But I know we have one on Sharp Properties that has been sitting there. It costs more to repair it than it would to replace it. And I just don't believe that it's the town's responsibility to purchase, maintain, and repair these charging stations. I think it should fall on the businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You may want to.
That's good feedback. And just,
Councilman Brock was saying, as far as technology-wise and updating the town hall, if they can look into the computerized where you can take temperature versus the handheld, more intimidating type of temperature taking, that
I know exactly what you're talking about. We have one at work where you come in, it's got the screen and got the little camera. Yeah.
and then, of course, the charging stations, that was a vision that happened well before our downtown revitalization project started. So ultimately, when McNulty's finished, Creech Road's extended, and we have that downtown center district, that, the vision was that people would come here to charge their vehicles and then walk around town spending money. That was the initial, they just had an opportunity to get them. I think we got some state support for that when there was a big push to go to hybrid vehicles. So that's good feedback. We'll have to decide, do we want to?
And it may be something we could revisit in the future.
Yeah, you're right. Just got to get somebody to take them over, I guess, is the point,
Yeah.
if we're going to. Or dedicate funds to getting it fixed and getting it right, one of the two. I see your point. Okay. Any other comments? I'm not opposed to increasing the budget line item for repairing town hall, and then if you don't use those funds, that's okay, but we have the placeholder. 20,000 as opposed to 10,000.
And
Item
the
350.
beautification and the beautification
And
project.
beautification, which we're going to bring before council soon, but the garden club is interested in. I know, Ms. Julie, I owe you a date to sit down with them again. And the speech I read to them and I sent to the council kind of proposes a 5 award system, 5 different competitions that groups and families and organizations can participate in beautifying an area of the town. Then we have the garden club as the judges for the competition, and then we give prizes, say, I don't know what, $1,000 for a winner, $750 for second place, $500 for third place. That would incentivize people to come. Do we buy the products for them? I don't know, but that's just another project we need to discuss. And you get the bang for the buck, because it's not all on the town staff to get out there and do it. You have interested civic and organizations that will come and do that and participate. Make it fun for the town. Very akin to what Councilman Griffin and Councilman Brock was trying to do before the bad weather came in, the trash pickup. Do that same service, have a competition, and plant some flowers along the way, and it's a win-win for everybody.
And
Go ahead.
on 356, on the beautification, I support that. I do think that, some of the new money that we're going to come into, the American Rescue Act, I think that, there's opportunity there to finish the bridge railing and that project up there, and some of those interstate corridor pieces into the town. And then also too, and I'm not as sure where it is at this moment because everybody's in budget moves now, but with the COG, the gateway projects, with the interstate gateway projects, I do have us on the list for hours. So when they get to that piece, I know they're starting with the airport side, and then they're going to come up to the 277, 77 piece, and it's one more the 26 and 126 coming into downtown. So we're on that list to get some beautification work to that, and what they're doing is collecting money through some cooperative pieces, through some bit manufacturing and those sort, to build up that pot. And once it reaches a certain amount, then they go forth. The good thing about it, by the time it get to us and some of the other areas that other council members on that board ask for, they will have plans in place where it might be stone sketched, type deals where they'll have standing plans. So we might not have to go through and redo all this stuff, and it'll be through them. But when they present it back, I'll make sure I share that with council and the administrator.
Good.
In the meantime, I would recommend bumping that number up to 15. Again, if we don't use it,
Okay.
that's okay.
That's fine. We do have to present prizes if we're gonna do the beautification
I don't know about y'all, but I'm willing to get out there and dig a few
Yeah,
holes and put a few
absolutely.
flowers in the ground, so.
I'm glad we didn't do that yesterday, because it froze last night, didn't it? Anyway,
It did.
Yeah.
Hopefully our fruit trees survived.
for
So
once
that was
not.
beautification projects.
Beautification projects, 10,000 to 15,000.
15,000.
Item 356. And Ms. Yarborough, please make a note, that's a do-out. Are we going to get out of the charging station business? We're going to have to continue that conversation into this process.
That may very well
Yeah.
be an offset for some of these
Yeah.
things too.
So we do need to.
Do we have a way of measuring how many people have used these charging stations? Because I'm just curious. I mean, I see a lot of Teslas in town. I see a lot of electric vehicles.
Yeah, I would
So I'm
think.
wondering, have we really marketed those assets, or they just sat there anticipating on maybe a Tesla coming off of 77, like, oh man, I need to charge type deal? I'm just wondering what has been put in place prior to us looking to get out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't drive a Tesla, but, I imagine that there must be something in the vehicle that says charging stations available at this exit, and that's what they go by. But we've not done any marketing that I'm aware of. So I honestly haven't not looked into that very closely, but I think we can look into that more. I would think that they would be in demand as they increase.
Well, one of the problems that we have is that the one on the Sharp properties does not work. I mean, it's dead. There's also, I know there's various websites
Yeah.
and organizations where
Apps.
apps that show active and functioning charging stations. I think they wanted to form an electric corridor kind of in and around this area. But again, that's only as good as the equipment we have, which if the equipment we have doesn't work, it's just a huge
Shouldn't.
eyesore.
Right.
So, if we're going to stay in that business, we need to make sure, A, they're functioning, and then B, measure how effective they are at drawing in individuals.
Well, that's the data I want to collect. If we can find that data, I'll be
Well-
happy of having that
I haven't been
conversation.
by. Let's ride over there after this. Let's just go over.
I can tell you how many people I've ever seen charging at the Sharp Shop, 0, because it doesn't work. So, and the feedback we got at one point was that it cost $17,000 to fix that particular charging station. And I don't even know if they even, I mean, Ms. Emery may be able to comment on this. I don't even think they make the OEM parts to even repair it. So I believe it would have to be replaced.
Yeah.
And there's,
I mean,
I don't know how much it costs, but they're not cheap.
And I would think that, the businesses are benefiting from the vehicles going to that location, so they need to share in the cost of repair.
Well, that would bring up another interesting point, that if we have them on businesses and we're paying for, and we're sitting in the park right now, which is our main attraction piece, why not put one or two in the park here? That would drive people into the park to participate, to walk, enjoy the nature's landscape.
Well, if we're going to pay for it, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for that. I don't support taking away the charging stations, because that's an initiative for a clean environment. But I support it coming here. I
No,
get
I
what
don't-
you're saying about the businesses.
No, I don't
where-
think, I'm not saying take them away. I'm saying if they're established, pass them on to the businesses
Yeah,
to let them
yeah.
maintain. If we want to have one or two here in the park, that's fine.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I think supporting it here in the park will be good. I follow you on that.
Yeah. Okay.
So there you go. So Sarah Lynn's making a note so we can revisit this. Y'all think about it? Yes, please.
Charging stations doesn't do very well at the hotel sites, but because of the sponsors in the past that have supported local manner, such as Lizard Thicket and different grocery stores, I was thinking about maybe it'd be a better place to have the charging stations at things like that, the local manner that has supported Lizard Thicket, us, and have the charging stations there. So when the hospitality, the people do come in here to our town, they can see that there's at the grocery store and frequent places they do. Because to be honest, the hotel, people are there for fun, they're not really paying attention. You know, they're on vacation and they do have a lot of mistakes. But homely environments such as the Gulfport Manor and different grocery stores that we have around town would be a better place for them.
Ms. Hennigan, in response to that, I think that the reason that you will find a lot of these charging stations at hotels is the length of time that it takes to recharge your vehicle. If it takes 4+ hours, let's just say, to recharge your vehicle, and you're staying at a hotel, you can do it overnight while you sleep. Much like when you acquire a Tesla, I know they come in and they actually install a charging station in your house, so you can charge your vehicle overnight and drive it during the next day. So if you're dining in Lizard's Thicket for 30 minutes, yes, there would be a benefit, but I think the benefit would potentially be greater here at a park where you could spend multiple hours, or at a hotel versus a grocery store where you may be in and out 20 minutes, or a restaurant where you may be out 20, 30 minutes. That's the logic behind that. Oh, I'm not saying you don't shop.
I can go across the state forever and shop for a long time, come back and my vehicle will be charged.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's different than
I've seen one or two at various retail establishments. I see more in parking garages where you have where people leave their car for a longer period of time. That's all.
Yeah. And I know Walmart, some of your Walmarts have them, and they're the high yield chargers, kind of like putting your cell phone on the chargers now. You drive over them. So they're the high yield, high capacity chargers that take 15 to 30 minutes to charge up. So some of your Walmarts down towards the coast in this state have them.
So we have a project, that's fine. Page 6, Mr. Williamson, is that where we are now?
Yes, sir. All right, this is inspections and code enforcement. This Kirk Wilson is the only staff member. And, the big item here that comes out of this part of the general fund is paying for RCI, the building and fire inspections. As I talked previously, we had a lower amount of building permits, and so that's reflected in a lower budget for fiscal year '22. And also just to compare to what we've paid them $65,764 currently, and currently have revenue from building permits of $93,000. So we're not in a deficit by any means paying them.
$28,000.
Yeah, so we're still, there's always a question, I'm sure, about whether to hire staff to do this or not. And, but I guess I'm not prepared right now to say that absolutely better. I will say that, that they're a building official. That is a job that, they have multiple certifications, and they're just not easy to find really good ones. And I think that the building official for RCI is very good. So I don't think that it's easy to just say, oh yeah, let's just go hire a building official, just because they're not very many around. And this is a good one, I think. So I'm not recommending changing at this point, but I think it's something we always would need to revisit to see, and I'll continue to think about that, but just wanted to flesh that out a little bit.
This is it's kind of a misleading number. We don't spend that much money. This is
Right.
the fee we pay them, and then the customer pays us a premium on top of our contracted service.
It's revenue driven.
Yeah, revenue.
That's
driven.
right, yeah.
So like you just, and you pointed out, we expensed 65.7, but we made 93.
Right.
So you netted $28,000, yeah.
Right.
So if you were to hire someone, now you're gonna, and you say you pay $60,000 based on credentialing.
Yeah,
Now
and
you're in a
probably more
deficit
than
of
that.
42,000, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, they command a pretty good salary, so, and they have several staff members, so it's not just a single. So just something to keep in mind.
Okay.
Well, I do think that if that number does, because if you look at the prior fiscal years, 19, 20, and 21, we budgeted 160, 165, 165. We didn't exceed it in 19, well, we didn't exceed it in any of these years, but we're at 117, 120, and then 65. I would probably speculate that a lot of that's COVID-related. It'll be interesting to see how this fiscal year 22 does, because if we did hire somebody at, $85,000, $90,000, and we were expending 117, 120, well, then we win in that example. If we, expend only 65 or 70, then obviously we would lose. So I think it's something we should continue to monitor moving forward. And if we do continue to see a trend where we're exceeding what we could potentially hire somebody, if we could find someone, then possibly look to make that leap.
Right.
And I know you said there's staff associated with it, then maybe so, and maybe there could be some training and continuing opportunities for the staff we currently have. So there
Correct.
could be a couple of other unexpected windfalls that would come along with hiring someone.
Right, and certainly better to always have them on staff versus contracted out, just because then we're much more responsive. But they do a great job, but still, those things can change within their company, and so I think it's always good to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, again, if we go back and we look at the prior fiscal year's revenues, they are going to exceed what we paid out. So it is I want to say profitable enterprise for the town, but we're not losing any money on this.
No, and you can't. I mean, somebody asks you for a permit, you're gonna charge above and beyond what we pay for RCI, so you're never gonna run a deficit. But, okay, page 7.
All right, page 7, Parks and Recreation, so it has a separate budget. Let's see, the salaries come from the workers that work for Steve. They are covered there in the salaries, and as you see, there's an increase this year with several events that we've had in the park that are COVID that were not anticipated last year, so that we upped that from 5,000 to 10,000 based on where we are right now in the current budget. Okay, another big one is repair projects in the park, 351. Several of the trail lights are not working, and so we need to hire an electrician. We've gotten one quote for that to replace all those lights or repair them. And then the park has several mature trees that probably need to be removed. So that's covered here in the 23,000. Then down here at landscape, when I met with Councilman Brock, recommended we're paying right now for fertilizer weed control, ants, and lawn service, and he recommended also mosquito control. So if we want to add that, that would be an increase there. I guess 3,000, I would think, would cover that. Not having gotten an estimate.
I don't know. I mean, that could be something we could put out for a proposal. I would imagine it shouldn't exceed, you're only talking 7 months, maybe 8 months out of the year, so you're going to pay a monthly fee. Personally, in the company I contract with, if you pay up front, they usually give you a month or so gratis. So The only downside is that you would have to close the park for an hour or two after the spray. There are some potential hazards for pets, until the applicant dries. But I can say that it works extremely well. I can walk into my yard, lay in my yard. Bugs, for the most part, do not bother me. I step across the property line into my neighbor's yard, and I get swarmed. So it does work, and there's nothing worse than sitting out watching your kids play soccer and swatting at mosquitoes. I think it would definitely make the park a lot more attractive, and it's something we could advertise that a lot of people would be like, oh, wow, this is a great service that I didn't even think about. So it could be, could be good for whomever does the service too. They could maybe put up a sign, this park protected by so-and-so, and maybe there's a little incentive there for us as well. I don't know, but it's definitely something I think we should look into.
Can I make a
Go
suggestion?
ahead, please.
Okay. Check with Richland County too, while you're looking at estimates, and just see if the county, it's on the tip of my tongue, they do, provide mosquito control, vector control. That's it, vector control. Check with the vector control officer for the county and see if we could be put on some rotation, because they do that. And two, they may in turn do it throughout the town in the main corridors, because they are riding as part of that vector control management. They still may be under some Zika plans in that SOP process too. So check that as we're looking at estimates.
Okay, so I would recommend increasing that to 18,000.
Could do 20 just to be
20,000.
safe.
Moving on to park and playground improvements. You see an increase there. So what we're doing with the current budget is to close the playground fence and using that amount. And then so next year, we would look at adding another piece of equipment to the playground, and then adding some cameras throughout the park. We just put here, and I know we're looking at different sources of funding, but this is something to add to the part that's needed.
Possible, when you're laying those lines for the call boxes, the charging stations we're talking about can be added at the same
Significant
time.
amount.
Julie, what's the fund balance in the park? I think we have a very large balance. For item number 550, because every year we have park and playground equipment that we budget and we don't spend it, so it should be growing.
I think that's just part of the general fund still.
Okay. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have copies of all the,
Let's see. Yeah, okay, you don't have it. All right, that's fine. Capital projects too, okay. My point was gonna be, we really don't need to budget 25,000 if you already have that standing balance in the past, but we can leave it for planning purposes, yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Nope, a little updated,
yeah.
a little updated.
Yes. Right. It was just, it's part of the general fund, but I mean, if you were to break it out by line item, you would see it's growing every year. Well, that's what Julie's shaking her head, no. My point was, though, I mean, if you were to break it out like that, yeah.
oh, yes.
Right, right. That's a good recommendation, sure. Okay. Yeah, and the intent all along is, as the population continues to grow in our playground, we want to expand it. We want to add security improvements that Councilman Sloan Griffin has brought up. Bump guards, so a vehicle that doesn't stop can't run into the playground. Bigger fencing. Yeah. 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 That's right. Yeah, right, a separate account.
Well-
Yeah, that's right. You certainly can do that. We can do that, yeah. Because we do roll over every year. We don't spend it like the federal government, yeah, at the end of the year. Okay.
And so, I mean, just to clarify, I mean, we are anticipating spending the 12,000 this year on the
Yes.
fence.
Yeah.
So-
15,000, 10,000 for cameras, yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Question.
In other words, in the past, we haven't spent it. Now we're going to start, because that was the plan. Everybody agrees to the plan. Yes, sir.
So, on line item, 2 line items on the 440, for the security, park security, and that's for us using Richland County at the moment, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. I don't know if we at that point yet. Are we kind of forecasting the part-time type deal? Are we at that point yet?
I don't think so.
Okay.
We can be, but
Okay.
he's referring to the conversations we've had in the past. Are we going to hire a part-time security guard? Are we going to pay Richland County for a full-time deputy to be over here all the time? Are we going to hire our own police? The first steps were the physical security, so we're going to put the gate in place. We're going to put the fence across the farmer's market field to keep people out during times where they're not supposed to be here. We're going to immediately pass an ordinance to restrict the use of this park certain time periods, unless you have a scheduled event which you're part of, a wedding, we're having a 4th of July fireworks display, in other words, something like that, for example. So we do need to come back to it. It is a concern, but once the gate is in place and the call boxes, then we'll monitor again, in my opinion. And if we still have violations and people in here, we can then proceed to enforce the ordinance and arrest people and charge them the maximum fine for being here. Okay?
Yeah, no, we're good. I just wanted clarification on that piece.
We certainly bring it back onto the table and continue to discuss.
Okay.
Okay, now
And-
I'm
and one-
now I'm a little confused. On line item 440, the past 3 fiscal years, we've shown, 1,100, 800, 3,700 in expenses. Are those security expenses related to events in the park, not just independent security during non-event hours? That's what I would think that would be budgeted for, correct?
That's my understanding, is it's for
So if
specific
we were
events,
to
but-
move towards some sort of part-time or full-time security, that number would balloon
Oh, yeah.
much greater.
Absolutely, yeah, we wouldn't be able to do that out
Okay,
of this.
so that 5,000 is event in the park driven?
Correct.
Okay,
Kind of continuing with where we are right now.
yes. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And also, just another piece of clarification, is that for the deputy that we have present doing meetings, all the town meetings? Also, is that cost included?
That should be under the manor budget.
Okay.
Or the governing body budget, but,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, yes, I think it does need to be in the governing body. I just don't know how that has been billed to the town.
Yeah, that's what
I'll have
I'm-
to check, yeah. I can get back to you on that.
Yes. No, it's not. And my last question is on 180, on salaries. That's part-time employee salaries?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That would also be event driven, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, sir, Mr. Fry. question was, are we allocating enough to the restrooms in the park due to some major repairs we had to undergo this year? I'm just repeating it from home since y'all aren't coming up to my microphone. I have to tell them what you're saying, but thank you. Thank you for being here.
And we
And
have some.
the answer is, yes, we are.
Steve?
Yes. We've, you have anything to add, Steve?
I know didn't we have a pipe bust this year, so that was unanticipated. Okay. Okay. So the trespassing ordinance should help a great deal.
Do we have a standard hours of operation posted on when the restrooms are open and not? And when does someone come and open and close them? I mean, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I would like to say, me and Eddie can witness this here, that watching the news on the TVs and stuff around here at Carolina Wings, people are using more toilet paper, and due to the pandemic, the increase, the rate of the purchase of toilet paper is going up higher, 50%, and that's been all over the news. So I think that would be a good suggestion to add some funds to that.
We ready for page 8 now? Where are we?
Yes. All right, so this is outside agency requests.
Mr. Wilson, before you start, can you define, or Ms. Emery, define what an outside agency is?
I mean, these are agencies that have come before council and requested this funding in the past, and the town has supported it as part of the community, as my general understanding.
Okay, so it could be any organization that meets the criteria?
We don't have criteria.
These organizations mail letters every year asking for donations.
Okay.
And in the past, the governing body has decided that these right here were funded. To my knowledge, we have never denied one, so it's not like this is a list of favored activities. It's just, these are the nonprofits and other organizations who say, we're supporting your community by having this Meals on Wheels or Big Red Barn or Camp Discovery for the field trips and all that. And so in the past, we've donated
Okay.
funds.
Well, you just said nonprofit, so there is
Well,
somewhat of a
That's my
criteria
word.
then.
Yeah, kinda, I guess.
It's
I mean,
implied.
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
it's not serving the organization as much as it's serving a way to serve the community, not the organization
John Q.
itself.
Landscaping Business is not going to be able to write a letter and say, hey, I need $500 for new lawnmower blades.
That's right.
Correct.
But, okay, so there is somewhat of a couple of boxes we check.
Yep.
Okay.
And we've had very robust debate in the past about, okay, this organization, let's take YMCA for instance, they're not in the town of Blythewood. Okay, but a lot of people who live here go use their services, whether it be kids soccer, you go swim teams meet there. So we've gone through, and I welcome that today also. So these aren't anybody's pet projects. These are just organizations in the past who've asked, and we've given them donations. They ask on a regular basis, and I'm going to read Monday night's meeting, some of the thank you letters that have come back in. Yeah. Yeah, that's how Miss Julie knows to let me know when the mail comes in, Big Red Barn or YMCA or Christian Assistance Bridge, the letter's on my desk, and I read it, and then we write a check. based on the approved budget that the council every year authorizes, yeah. Okay.
So from our perspective, all we did was just take what had been done previously budget-wise and just put that in the current budget. So that's where these numbers come from.
And you can adjust these up or down. We can do that, because as you know, many of these organizations were closed during the pandemic, during the COVID crisis. So I would assume their expenses went down. So if you were to say, take a 25% reduction on each of them or something like that and use that money for capital improvements or land acquisition for the town, that could be a potential answer here.
Mr. Mayor.
Correct. Yes.
They're not tourism-related, or, so we
Yeah.
can't use the H-tax, A-tax.
We've only added one in the last few years, I think, which
Right.
is Community Keys.
That's correct.
And most of these all help the less fortunate on here. A lot of them are helping our seniors, are helping our homeless, helping those that are out of work right now, those that need that actual assistance. So I'm happy with every one of these myself. I mean, we upped Meals on Wheels a couple of years ago or last year just because of, you know, what they do. They approached us, Senior Resources approached us, so, but the rest have pretty much stayed constant. I think it's, you know, they're all very appropriate expenditures.
Yeah, question.
Go ahead, please, Councilman Griffin.
Mr. Mayor.
Sir.
Does this take in consideration the Alumni Association as well as the thing that we're looking at with the gym?
Yeah, don't we have the Alumni Association coming up?
That should be on a different funded item.
Where?
Oh, I don't see
Why?
that.
I saw it on here, hang on.
Yeah. I don't recall
I don't
seeing
see-
that.
I don't-
I
I
don't
don't
recall
see
seeing that
that.
in the budget, and it's a very
I don't
good
think
question.
so,
Why?
yes.
Yeah, it's here.
So,
It's not on here.
I think it was taken out of H-tax.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at here.
But I don't think we got an application for it.
so to add them to the outside agency request, that can be done at this moment.
Yeah, but yes, sir, I mean, this is a work group, that's what we're doing, we're penciling it up. Now, I would recommend if we add, then we need to rebalance those figures. So in other words, maintain the $30,000 total. What's the total?
30,500, but 30,000 is a good number.
That's what Councilman Brock and I kind of discussed. If, whatever we add, we reduce everybody a little bit to add that new one, so we don't continue to grow bigger than $30,500. And that's just a recommendation. We can override that.
I have, Mr. Mayor, a couple of, some people might use the word radical, but it's a different approach to this. I think the first thing that we need to institute is a cap, that any requesting organization can only receive X amount of dollars. What that cap is, whether it be 5,000, 4,000, 3,000, that would be the will of the council. But I think that we should absolutely institute a cap. If $30,000 is our cap for outside agency requests, then let's see, how many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm sure there are other organizations that would qualify that we would say, hey, you know, we agree that these organizations benefit the community. Maybe the VFW could be one of them, Eddie. They could make the list. I'm not sure. No? Okay.
They don't need it. I mean, they're a nonprofit, but they're not allowed to get you know, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So,
My recommendation isn't to strike anybody.
Yeah.
It's
cap
to
the-
cap it so that you only get X amount of dollars. That way, if there are other, because essentially, if we're going to add one or two, then they're all going to go down, or some of them are going to go down. Because if we've decided $30,000 is our ceiling, as to how much money we're willing to fund for outside agency requests, if we bring in excess of 9, then there's going to have to be a decline somewhere, so that we balance to 30,000 or 30,500. Another recommendation, and this may not catch much traction, I don't know, is to create discretionary pools of money that each council member and the mayor can allocate toward these requesting.
That's how the county does it.
I understand that.
Because they all have districts. We do not have districts. We're at large. This meeting here and this process is where we put those things in. So in other words, if you have recommendations, that's this meeting, the next meeting, and then the 2 readings is where we go over it. If we had districts in the town, I would agree with you. And that way you could make sure there's an earmark for your district, but we don't have that. So I personally don't agree. Maybe the council members do. I could have sworn I saw this in there when
I
I went
thought we
off.
funded that out of a different fund balance this time, last time, right?
You did.
I think if that's appropriate to keep funding it out of there, as long as they keep getting the same amount of money we funded. I don't think it matters where it comes from, as long as the money gets to them where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because we're talking with Councilman Griffin, the elder, about the future of the gymnasium and turning it into a potential civic center to do some events there, with his alumni association being the nonprofit board that would oversee the management of it. And we're still talking about how we can do that. Because often when the manor's not available, a great example, the South Carolina Veterans Motorcycle Club wanted a place for their annual meeting at the end of July. Well, just so happened the manor was available, so they're coming here, whereas really what they need is a gym with the auditorium kind of setting where the speakers get up there and speak and they're sitting in folding chairs, you know. It would be better there than here, and probably a little less cost for them also, but, so we need the space, absolutely. Yes, sir.
So I'm confused, Councilman Bowman, where does that come from for
I don't know.
Bethlehem
That's
Berry?
why I asked Julie
I don't
where it
think-
was paid for. I thought it was paid out of H-tax.
I believe it was paid out of H-tax. I don't think it was necessarily designated at that point, but that's how we paid them previously.
Okay.
It was out of H-tax.
That,
So they are getting payment.
They did, but we don't,
oh, no,
I
if
didn't
that's
put it
an-
in the current,
is that an allowable H-tax use?
I would probably have to look at that
Well,
and
if they
see.
sponsor events, that brings
Yeah,
tourism.
it kind of depends on how it's being used.
Right.
So then it's not guaranteed, then if it's not being used, that fits the H-tax criteria.
Correct.
So then it's best to put it back in outside agency request where it's more guaranteed.
It might be, I mean, I think that would make it, so you wouldn't have to be so concerned about its specific use and you
I think-
benefiting the organization. I mean, from a budgeting standpoint, that would be simpler.
I think that should be moved to outside agency.
That's fine.
request.
And we don't have it currently in the H-tax right
How
now,
much was
anyway.
that funded last year? You remember?
$6,000?
Now, that's the difference. If you fund it,
Stay there.
It's six.
It was $6,000 to enable them to assist in saving the gymnasium for future use and.
Right,
there's my
yeah.
so,
question. If we move it to outside agency and we cut everybody and we cut them, now we're cutting them out of money when they're getting 6,000 out of this. And if we say they got 10 and we're gonna split it.
We don't have to
Well,
necessarily give them
we have
6,
not
though, if that was
agreed
for a
to that-
specific
that
purpose.
I'm
budget
saying
money.
though, but if they were happy with 6, we put 6 in here, then we're gonna have to, so if they're getting 6. But if we say we're gonna cut this budget, then I hate to see them get cut when they're not getting cut at the moment.
Yeah, what's the number we want to go with on
Well,
outside?
that's what I'm saying. We have not met and agreed to the 3,500.
The easiest thing to do, gentlemen, would be wipe everybody down to 0 and work from the bottom up.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think that'd be the easiest way. That's the fairest way, because
Yeah, it's
if
kind
we,
of already weighted that way. If you look at the impact to the community, I think we've done a great job of distributing transitions, works thousands of people into, from homelessness, and getting them back on their feet. Christian Assistance Bridge does the same. That's why they're top of the heap as far as money goes. YMCA provides health services for the community, okay. Chamber of Commerce, we do give a lot of money to the chamber, so that's on the table. Meals on Wheels feeds thousands of elderly and homeless people. Big Red Barn, we already give them a lot of money in different accounts, so they get a contribution every year for the vets. Camp Discovery does the field trips for our kids in nature every year. Community Keys does community outreach in our area. They've handed out a lot of masks and hand sanitizer this past year. And then Stonehouse Ministries does the counseling free of charge for people who can't afford it here with Trinity Church. So, having said that, I mean, yeah, we do need to come up with a bottom line number. Is it 40,000, is it 35,000, or do we maintain what it is now? And of course, now we have to add the Blythewood Athletic Association, if they're the organization that's gonna manage that facility for us over there in the future.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
did you take in consideration if the town is going to get the gym, what it would cost?
No, we did talk about, that's why I said you and I your board, we got to sit down and, I do want to, I have a vision that is used as a civic center of types. And we do, you name it, ethnic events, children's events, things that really aren't appropriate for this venue here in Delco Manor, but you need a stage, an auditorium kind of setting, little concert, acoustic and have another place for us to go. He said, did I take into consideration that the town is going to take over that gymnasium? Yeah, and I'm basing all this on that assumption that we are, that the school district's already allowed us to have it. We got to do the deeding purposes and things like that, transfer over. And then we have to have a nonprofit board to manage it for us, which would be, if the athletic association accepts that role, then they would manage it, sponsor it, send us a budget every year for maintenance and upkeep and things like that. So kind of an extension of this council, just like Steve does for us here. And you charge a little bit, so you have a revenue stream, you know, people who want to rent it, but it's certainly not as much as this would be. Okay, that was a lot of talk to say, not a whole lot, but yeah, so that's where we are. We need to add the athletic association to that line.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to add the Blythewood Soccer Club
Okay,
as an outside agency as well. They have over 200 kids that come, more than, almost 50% or more, that come from outside of town to come in to play soccer. I think it's a worthy inclusion in this, and they are a 501c3 as well, so
and
they
you
do.
said outside of town, so would that be an H-tax?
Uh,
Are they,
they're not really tourism promoting, though.
are they, okay.
They serve the greater community. But I wouldn't put them as a,
They're not.
they're not like an event or anything like, I mean, if it fit the criteria for H-Tax, that's okay. I don't think it exactly does. Kind of falls under the same, billing as the YMCA,
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
so. I don't see why not. Well, I mean, if we're starting at zero, then everybody could be,
Yeah.
I don't see why not, yeah.
Okay, so let's pencil that in. And I think, well, we'll get to it in a little bit. I'll wait to the end. I think we do fund their tournaments, Blythewood League tournaments every year, but we'll get to that. All right?
As far as making changes, how would you like to see it come back
Well,
to
we
you?
got, Sarah Lynn, another due out is the board has to decide how much we're going to allocate to outside agency requests. That's a due out for the next meeting.
Okay.
And if we increase or decrease, and then we add in anything that the council members are nominating that have a direct impact on the citizens of Blythewood, then we will certainly add those in and then redo the weighting math, kind of like we did the H-tax list. Yes, ma'am. Julie? Yes. Everything you do today that you, for next meeting, just highlight it all in red bold, so we know it's an ad, and yeah, well, 1,000, just put 1,000 and we'll debate. And for the Athletic Association, what did we give them last year, 6,000? Because they're getting ready to either assume the role of managing that facility or deciding not to, and then we'll go forward from that point. But, you know. Make sense? Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you. We're adding it. We're adding it.
Any allocation already? You said it was 6,000 that you gave before.
last year, the current year budget.
Under H-Tax last year?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. They were a late request, I think, and so we added it under H-Tax.
Fine, I was
Okay.
trying to figure out where we were moving it from.
Gotcha. Okay, any other questions?
Mr.
We'll move
Mayor.
to the- Yes, sir.
This seems like an appropriate stopping point.
Yeah.
I would call for a
Okay,
5-minute
great.
recess.
All right.
For a restroom break.
Second.
Then probably a motion second for a 10-minute recess. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. For recess. Coffee and donuts outside. Some fruit, thank you, ma'am.
Somebody after my heart making coffee.
I drank so much yesterday, I had heart failure. I had to defend my proposal when I did it. I am moving on.
adjusted.
It's the exact same amount.
You think if they go research, worry about $30? No.
I was more concerned about, not concerned, but where did it come from?
General fund is where it came from.
It comes out of this other budget. They wanna keep it at $60. It goes in here and they decide they don't wanna keep it at $60. They're gonna say it's forward, you're losing money. We ought to be able to take it where we paid it the first time, if it's allowable, and keep it at the same amount. My concern is if it gets cut.
But it's not an annual thing. At the,
Well, we just have to H-tax it every year. If it, that would be the way to make sure you get compliant.
My phone went dead.
I left a meeting yesterday and went over to the farmer's market, man. She had a lot of vendors over there.
Yeah.
It was jumping yesterday.
I'll stop by. It was a good turnout, farmer's market. They had plants, they don't have fruit yet, you know, that'll
It
be
did
coming.
have some good fruit. I got a watermelon, corn on the cob, cucumbers, and tomatoes. But next week, they got CBD oil out there, so
Oh,
I'm going to get CBD salve for Donna's back. People in Winsboro, they hemp last year and got it processed.
trying to take notes on what we talked about here. Park security. Manning.
You know, I found out that picture I sent y'all of the car, that was a vandalized car. Somebody
Yeah.
sliced all three tires.
Yeah, and they wrote on the side, this is payback or
Sent
something
you
like that.
that-
Yeah, I
sent
know,
you
I
that
saw it.
picture.
Mm-hmm.
I came over and took pictures of the damage. Then I looked at the tape and the damage was done at 3:07 in the afternoon. Broad daylight,
That's gutsy.
broad daylight.
How did somebody not see anything?
Nobody saw it except on camera.
Were we able to get a tag number?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's in the hands of the sheriff's department now. Good thing is, it's just, I think Jason, I think he knows who this is. If it is, it's an adult, and an adult can be prosecuted earlier than July, so. They did something down there the other day. I don't know what it was. They need,
You gotta go back to work?
I gotta go with Judge.
No, I'm off today, all day. I took a vacation day, I didn't know how long.
This thing going, I got to go at 12.
All right, what time we got now? My phone's dead.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, we'll press through. The only next stopping block will probably be the hospitality tax. Or obstacle, I should say. Okay. What was in my hair?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, I got you.
This is what we talked about.
Okay, I'll call us back to order. We are moving along with our budget workshop. What page did we end on? 9.
Actually, go back to page 8.
8, please,
Yep.
go ahead.
Okay, so the final section under outside agency requests on this page is some transfers that are just worth noting. Transfer to the manor is consistent with what we've done previously coming out of the general fund, and we'll go into manor budget later, probably next budget session, to go into more detail. And the, transfers to the capital improvement fund is how we have paid for things like the Hoffman House steps. So we'll just continue that because there will always be projects like this. And then the contingency is where we are in revenues versus expenses, and that's kind of summarized at the bottom, just below that. And that will change based on the what we've changed here today. So you'll see a different number at the next draft. So I just wanted to point that out. That's correct.
So we're running a surplus.
Yeah, every year.
Mr. Williamson, one further question, then we can move on. Is the $12,000 that the town pays the manor for usage, is that an appropriate number? Because if we're underpaying the manor, then we're hurting the manor
I think-
for our use.
Steve,
I think it's reflected and based on the use.
do you give the town a discount? Or are you paying?
Would you be able to provide a more reflective fair market value of what we receive by using the manor for the council, bar, BZA, planning commission, and other related events? Because if that number's low, we need to bump that up because we're hurting the manor.
Right.
And especially if we want the manor to stand on its own. Ballpark. Okay. Okay.
It's tough, though, but we're hurting the town, too, essentially, because we have to book it regardless if we use it or not. And all the times the BZA cancels, the BAR, we still have to pay that because you have booked it. I got you. Go ahead. At the very end of the year. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, we're trying to move those accounts over to the manor. You'll hear Councilman Brock and I bring this up quite often. We're trying to separate it so it's its own entity. Now, at the end of the day, no fault of his, you're running a deficit because you got to pay a huge mortgage and some other things. So that we have to, yeah,
Well,
that's right. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
yeah. I think what would be, the intent would be to determine what is the actual deficit versus a plug number to balance that budget. Yeah. And if we're underpaying, we need to pay our fair share. Yes.
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 But we do want to make sure, like, for instance, we did that strategic plan. We're doing this meeting right here. That took away from a potential event, so we need to pay. That's right. And it was, yep. Okay. Mr. Williamson?
Okay. Moving on to page 9, Capital Improvement Fund. Nothing particularly has changed here. So, unless there's any questions. Right, I think what we would do is transfer money from the capital improvement to the general fund it came to purchase that, because we have been setting aside this money for vehicle replacement.
Your question is it a standalone account that you fund?
Yeah, no. No. But we will transfer that when we purchase the vehicle.
So that's why the past 3, 4 years, you don't have an expenditure yet, but you're gonna have a big one.
Correct. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Right. Right. Write the check. Yeah. I got you.
Right.
I'm with you. Yeah, write the check every year. Don't wait 5 years. Yeah. And just set it aside. You got what he's saying, Julie?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right?
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to state accommodations tax. Can you hand me those copies? So this is, what I did was we changed some of the way we budget for the state accommodations tax because it's so much more specific about how it to be used, and rather than try to apply it to events, and part of the event expenses could meet the state accommodations tax and some of it couldn't, it just got to be, and also has to go to the state accommodations tax committee. My thinking is let's keep that as straightforward as possible so you don't have to get into whether it's an allowable expense or not. And so what I try to identify is the ones that we clearly know would meet the requirement. And so that's what you see here. And I wrote this memo to kind of summarize that. So you'll see the state accommodations tax would be used for Blythewood Historical Society employee and maintenance repair projects, Christmas decorations at Town Hall and I-77, and then Doco Meadows Park, security gates that we are currently working on, and then additions to security around the playground and a sidewalk there. So those are all very clearly state accommodations tax expenses, so that's how I separate it. So then, I guess in addition to that, that is coming out of the 65% tourism related, just so it's clear, and then plus the carryover from previous years that needs to be spent by statute. And then you also see the 30% advertising and promotion. Again, going back to the general fund where we had 21.6. 50% of what we would pay MPA is, so split it up, 50% general fund, 50% state aid tax, and then we'll add the additional 4,800 to the manor, and I'll make that change.
That number from 24 would go to 21.6 as well.
Correct. And then also out of that 30%, we could pay for the visitor's guide that's done every year.
What has that expense been in the past?
Expense
How much
for-
have we earmarked for the visitor's guide? Was it 2,500, 5,000?
Advertising and promotion.
$46.67.
So we can just say 4,700 and
Right.
budget for that. If it comes in under, we're to the good?
Right, so that would probably be able to pay that out of the 30%. And that would probably complete the 30% expenses if it worked out like this.
and if there's any left over, we can use it accordingly.
Advertising for,
Yeah.
tourism, yep.
Yep.
So you're gonna add that to your memo here? Because right now, you just recommended Blythewood Historical Society, Christmas decorations, and Ducko Meadows Park.
Okay, so this
That's
is
for
going
the
up to the.
65%.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 30%.
But it does need to be added. I mean, I see, if you look up there, 30% advertising promotion.
Yeah.
Okay, and it says visitors guide update question mark. Well, just yesterday, Phil sent me
Okay,
this
good.
amount, so I haven't
All right.
put that in there. So,
That's correct. And that's an estimate. Some years it's bigger, some year, yeah. This is half of her fee. Yeah. That's correct, yeah.
Now, that number, for clarification, can change based on the usage, her allocation of her time. If it comes in 70-30, then we can pay up to 70% tourism-related out of SAT, assuming the funds are there. And then you make up the difference either, I mean, you could make it up with local accommodations, with H-Tax, unencumbered funds, whatever. But I know the part of the agreement was to split out the tourism-related versus non-tourism-related time. No. Experience Columbia or the CVB.
You're exactly right. Yep. I have it in my notes. Go ahead, Mr. Williamson.
okay. All right, so now, it's best to look at the summary, I mean, of what I've written, because it tells a better story about where we are. So what I did with the remainder of local accommodations tax and H-tax, and after you take out the required amounts, and kind of, if you look at local accommodations tax expenses, line 750, transfer to BFC, so that's a required amount that we're going to pay off the bond. And then if you flip over to H-Tax real quick, you'll see at the bottom 5 lines, you see those are expenses that are going to need to come out of H-Tax before we get to the tourism-related expenses. So, first off, fund balance expense is just taking money from the hospitality tax fund balance and putting it into the budget to potentially pay for the I-77 bridge. So we can talk about how that would work in the future, but that's what that line is. You'll see it at the top and you see it at the bottom. So that's just a transfer. Then you see the 51% going to the bond, the $86,859 going to Manor from the hospitality tax, and then then an additional amount going to the Manor Capital Improvement Fund, and see what that goes to. So, all right, then going back to tourism-related on both H-Tax and LAT, you can go back
Mr.
to.
Williamson, can you give us page numbers when you're flipping back
Oh,
and
I'm
forth?
sorry, yeah. So I'm looking at page 11, local accommodations tax. And then page 12, H-Tax. Let me go over that again. If you look at the line items at the bottom of the H-Tax expenditures, you see the transfer to the bond, transfer to Manor Operating Fund, transfer to Manor CIP Fund. Those are all taken off the top on H-Tax expenditures, and it leaves for H-Tax, tourism-related, line 375, back up a little bit. For for H-Tax, 92,454. So I took the 92,454 plus, go back to local accommodations tax, page 11. You see the 48,169 for promotion and tourism. For a, I'll see that, make sure.
So that's how you get the 140.
That's how I get the
623.
140, 623, yes. So that is the total number that I was using to try to reduce some of these expenditures for the applications, but let everybody get on the same page on that, so we're move forward.
So 72% of our bond to the Blythewood Facilities Corp. comes out of local accommodations and H, and the other 28 comes out of general fund.
Correct.
Okay. Eventually, that goes away,
That's right.
long after we're all gone.
That's right.
But it does go
2036,
away.
I mean,
So
20,
2035?
I think it's 2036, but,
Close.
yeah.
It'll be here before we know it, yes. So, on a positive note, that would free up about $230,000 in some future iteration of this budget. One of the things that I really think we have to start paying more attention to is on page 12, lines 980 and 981, which is the 87,000 to fill the Manor's deficit and the 18,700 for Manor capital improvement. I mean, that's over 100,000, about 100 and what, $7,000
Yes.
that I believe we've all kind of got on the same page and made a commitment to push the Manor towards self-sufficiency.
So just from an organizational standpoint of the meetings, I was thinking I'll have a lot more information about the Manor at the second work session. Steve and I will have kind of a presentation of kind of how these expenses came to be what they are and how COVID played into that, and then how to cover that and what to find out, just have a discussion more about what is the mission of the Manor moving forward. But I can kind of go through my paper and answer any specific questions, but my plan was to kind of get this straight first and then go into more in-depth on the Manor at the second work session.
Well, and also at some point, I believe that ARP funds
Yeah.
can absolutely be used, it seems without question, to shore up the revenue loss that the Manor experienced last year and potentially some this year, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
So that could be a windfall.
Yeah,
for us.
that would certainly help for right now, but I think we need to not just anticipate, obviously we can't anticipate that
no.
moving forward, but, so anyway, just talk a little bit more in depth
those
about how to
one-time
manage
items.
the Manor. And so we can talk a little bit about the additional funding then as well.
It's about $45,000 currently.
Yes.
Yeah. 44,876.98.
It just goes into the fund balance, the general fund balance. Yes.
That's absolutely right. We do not know. It's not been allocated. They're still doing budget now at the State House, yes. We'll talk to you about exactly how to do that. Any questions? These numbers here are reflective of the staff recommendations. And those of you who don't know, the one with the yellow column, just one single column, there's two sheets here.
Yeah.
The single one, what we wanted to do, and I sat down with Mr. Williamson's staff, was to say, you know, it seems like every year we argue over all these organizations and how much they should get and how much we allocate. So I wanted to take all emotion out of it and use an objective standard where we have a point scale. And some of the criteria that we desire for our tax monies to go to was codified, and that we're looking for, are you a nonprofit? Then you get a certain amount of points. If you're for-profit, you get less points, obviously, because we want to support more nonprofits. Is it an in-town event you're hosting? In other words, the Artists Guild one year had to go to Columbia Country Club because the manor was not available, so we still supported them, but at a lower rate because it's not in the town itself. So you get higher points if you're in town. You get higher points if you're a multi-day event, because you're drawing tourism over a period of days, not just one set of hours. Are the people who are attending going to stay in the Blythewood hotels, and can you prove that based on vacancy rates after the event's over? And then what we call jokingly the Franklin ratio, the amount of money you get divided by the total number of visitors that showed up. So what's that ratio? The higher ratio, the better, obviously. And then the net income, how much does this organization walk away with after the event's all over? Obviously, the lower that number, the better, because if you're making a whole lot of money and you're getting a lot of sponsorships and selling tickets, you should gradually be weaned off the government's funding, and you can host your own event with a sponsorship from the town of Blythewood and the marketing coming from the town of Blythewood. And then, of course, new events, that's the debate today, too. When you have a brand-new applicant, do we fund them at 100%, or do you fund them lesser to see if the proof of principle is going to work, and then we increase the next time? So having said all that, once you design, and the staff did this, I was not involved, I just let them do it as unbiased participants, and they came up with a scoring system on which events meet these categories and have the highest score, they should be funded at the highest weighted level, because they're giving us the impact that we're looking for as a community. So as you look at this later, if you want to get a copy of this, you'll see how it came out. And then the staff went over and recommended a cut or a reduction based on the calculation of these criteria. I hope that makes sense. But we wanted to do an objective, rational way to do it without debating, you know. Now, there are exceptions. Our cultural events are not moneymakers, but our value statement and our strategic plan earlier this year, we said we support the veterans events, the Black History Month, Women's History events. They won't make any money. They're free to the public, but they also won't draw a lot of tourists. So those will be the exceptions to our rule. Okay, having said that, Mr. Williamson, go ahead, sir.
Okay. And then just to have additional discussion, I did create another spreadsheet you see there, and that the criteria there you see in number 2 on my summary, where and this is from discussions with Councilman Brock, just kind of said, okay, well, what would it look like if the cap was 10,000? And so some different criteria. You also did do a little bit of scoring here of the most quantifiable criteria, and then one difference, just philosophical difference on new events. So we just took 50% of new events versus 100% on the previous one. So just to get some discussion on how we want to tackle these different types of events. All right, so the total amount requested, which keep in mind, so regardless of any of the scoring or anything like that, is $199,200. Okay. The
Which
total-
column is that, I'm sorry?
This is the total amount requested from the
Are you on
applicants.
this sheet?
It's on both sheets, I believe.
I see 140,623 as total amount available.
That's the
total amount
combination of
available.
leftover local accommodations.
That's how much we
and-
have to spend, but
Yes. H
but the
tax.
amount we have requested is 199,200. So
Okay,
obviously,
there
we're
you go.
going to have to cut in order to,
Correct.
be
Stay under
budgeted, be
that.
balanced, right? Okay, so just so you know, that's where this is all coming from. Okay, so
And what is the total of this one? I don't have,
That
my
one,
phone's
yeah.
dead, or I do my math myself. Right here, what's this total?
the total for the
Right there,
scoring one.
129,
No, right here.
129,450.
To the right.
So that comes in under.
Oh, that's
That's on
that's
the
his recommended.
recommended.
I want to know the
The
full.
requested.
The requested is the same on either one. I mean, the
no,
requested
no,
is
no.
coming from the applicant.
You totaled up what the staff recommended. I want to know what the people have asked for. What's that total?
140, 199, 200.
199, okay, got it.
Question, does that 199 include the 22 and the 10 for the historical museum?
No,
Okay.
Aha.
So it's everything in big bold.
correct. Yep, thank you.
So 32.
What is what?
I'm sorry?
Range for Hope? That's a nonprofit veterans organization. They're having their golf tournament at Cobblestone. Local to Blythewood, I mean, they've got a chapter here. I don't know where they're headquartered out of.
Okay, so I'm calculating, 231,200. If you added in the part-time employee and renovations to the historical.
That's correct, but, those are coming out of the state accommodations tax, so those have already been
Okay.
pulled aside. they came in.
All right, yeah, I just
So
took those off.
Probably
yeah.
shouldn't be on this sheet.
Yeah, I know,
I
it should
got
not
you.
be, yeah.
199,200 then.
Right.
Yep.
It's all, if we funded everything as 100%,
Correct.
okay? Tracking. And then if we did the caps, it's 107,000 we would spend.
That's right. Okay, so let's look at the caps, because,
Okay.
actually, I didn't mention that in my summary. So part of that was also, because I know that, the intent is to set aside some of this money for land purchase. So we took out, you see a note there, 20% to land purchase, which is 28,124. Then you have the remainder, 112,498 after the 20%, and then you have 107,700.
Any difference could also be rolled over into the capital expenditures fund that we're saving. So if there's an extra $5,000, we could roll that into the 28 and park 33, however.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
We don't have to spend it, is I guess my point there. The idea behind some of this second sheet was we have to look at it from the perspective of what can we easily quantify and what can we not. It's easily quantified whether or not you are a not-for-profit, is yes or no. Is it an in-town event? Yes or no. Is it a multi-day event? Yes or no. Everything else becomes subjective, and a lot of the data that's fed to council is applicant-driven. That creates possible conflicts of interest. So I think that to remedy some of that, you can remedy it with a couple of ways. You can remedy it with a cap. You're only getting so much. Or you can put a higher weight on some of the ones that are easily quantifiable. However, then everybody's going to shift that. But then everybody's on equal footing. And then it's your goal to get the ratios, income up so that you get a higher score on your secondary measures. Can we accurately verify the tourist ratio? Well, we're taking someone's word for it. Can we accurately verify someone's net income? We're taking someone's word for it. You know, if you don't make a lot of money yet you generate a lot of tourists, well, that's going to make you look good. Well, I need more money next year. Well, how do we know that you actually made what you made? Well, I told you that we did. Okay? I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. But again, it's not something that's easily verified, like not-for-profit status in town. So, you know, you eliminate that by instituting a cap. I also am a firm believer that we should not necessarily fund first-time events at 100%. I'd rather scale them down, prove to us that the concept is valid, and then scale it back up in the future. That's my opinion. So that's why I asked Mr. Williamson to put together kind of a second analysis that would look at, you know, the events that deserve full funding up to a certain level, and then we start stepping back down from that point. I'd be curious as to what other members of council have think about that.
I would reduce by a percentage. I wouldn't reduce by, because you're talking about an organization asking for 25,000 and you're going to give them 10. I think that's too drastic of a cut. I would rather do an overall, say 75% of all these, or would be the funding level as a recommendation, and then see what that number comes out to be. So what is 199.2 times 0.75? My phone's dead. I apologize, or else I would.
And
That'd be about 150,000, which
Then
is,
that would be what we would fund. So
well, it's about a quarter of $200,000, so it's right at 150, which still is in excess of what we have available.
And, you know, a further distinction is, you know, the events that have tickets versus like the Veterans Day and Black History Month celebrations. So you, for drawing up another spreadsheet, would you say all that is subject to the 75%?
No, yeah, that's a great point. No, those would have to remain the same. I mean, they can't hold the event unless, because they don't raise
Right.
those funds.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what I can do is create another spreadsheet and just take those out, fully funded, and then the
reduce the
75% of the
number.
remainder.
That's
Okay.
right. I like that idea.
So I'm curious, how does other municipalities, you know, we looked at it at like City of Columbia, Richland County, in the beginning of this process on how they fund these different events. And if I remember correct, Councilman Brock, Richland County does a 50% straight out the bat. So if you ask for 10,000, at the most,
Yeah.
you're only eligible for 5,000.
And then they step down from
Then they
there.
start stepping down. They step down as gradually, and I was thinking that was our overall plan, to a degree, was to kind of go through some methodology of that process.
And that's what they've done on this far right
Yes,
column, the
yeah.
staff, but, I mean, just the judgment call is 50% too much to cut, you know what I mean? Or do you do it by weighted scale? So anybody who asks for 25,000 gets a 25% cut. The 10,000 only gets a 20% cut. The 4,500, 2,500 don't get any cut.
Well, the problem you're going to run into
Well-
there is then you're going to have everybody requesting $25,000.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, what Councilman Sloan Griffin just said. I mean, based on that logic, based on your comments earlier, Mr. Brock, if I know I'm gonna get 50%, I'm gonna superinflate my expenses so I can get more money.
Well, then we tell you that
Yeah,
no
I know,
thanks.
But I'm just saying, that's
Yeah.
what,
Your budget doesn't justify that
yeah.
request.
Budget would have to justify it for sure, like we go over with the expenditures, would
Yeah.
have to do that, but I prefer the first sheet, the weighted one, that's my preference. And I understand that we're about $21,000 short from what the 107 to 129, if we fully funded this, but, you know.
Your microphone.
Microphone.
Can you fix that mic, yeah.
We're transferring, last year, we transferred $130-something thousand out of fund balance to fund these things, and the fund balance still continued to grow. It did not reduce from last year. It actually increased, even after the expenditure of $137,000. Even with you taking the 120 transfer out of fund balance, that still leaves $610,000 in hospitality fund balance. In my opinion, you fund it at the 129,450 and you transfer the $21,750 out of fund balance to do the first sheet.
Well, here's your problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it.
Well, I understand that, but here is my problem with that. If we want to buy $1 million piece of
that's
property
why.
out of H-tax money, we're only saving, let's just say, $25,000 a year. We're not going to be able to buy that property for 40 years at that rate.
Well, we already have 2.1 million
Yeah,
in
we're
that
sitting
account.
on a fund balance, a general fund of $2.1
Okay,
million.
that's a different discussion, though.
Yeah,
Right.
here we are, though, you know, and I know we're gonna have this debate over and over, and that's why if we're gonna debate it, I like sheet 1 over sheet 2, which I appreciate the work going into it. But the fund balance transfer is minimal. Even after last year, we transferred $137,000, the fund balance still grew. So we owe it to these people. These people out here that are dependent on these events are the ones that's putting this in the fund balance. It's not coming from our pockets. So it's coming from these businesses that pay it. And we deserve, or they deserve us putting on the events that can generate more funds for them. Now, that's my opinion. And you know where I stand on it. So I'm just going to leave it there.
So,
Yes, sir. Mr. Henry. Right. 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 Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yep. Right. That's right. Right. That's right. Right, that's right. And now this is based on history, so, right on. And if you recall last year we did the Great Reset, and we stopped this whole process, and we created this one with the new policies in place, and new definitions of SAT and H-tags, and all the people have to apply for either or both. And then we based it on not what they were saying. They do include that information, by the way. They estimate their total sponsorships, they estimate total attendance and tickets sold. That information does get to us. But what we're doing now is on the tail end, when they show us those receipts, that's when we make the tough decision that, congratulations, you're now on your own, because you just made, that. You'll see this come to fruition as these groups start coming back. And there's no malintent, it's just that 3 years in a row, you've netted $16,000, you ask us every year for 15, congratulations, you're now on your own. That's exactly right. Or buy some property with that money as opposed to right. So absolutely hear what you're saying. I think we're spot on with it. The first thing was try to get an objective system, look back at their historical data, which is driven by the organization that Councilman Brock says. There are things, if we, doesn't look right, doesn't smell right, there are ways to control this. We issue town wristbands, and we give wristbands to the event vendors. And we give you 3,000 of them. And then, so if you only sold 2,500, you owe us the 500 wristbands back, so we can actually capture exactly who came to your event and did. That's a drastic measure. I would not want to do that unless I had to, but there is a way to control it. But yeah, great points. Any comments, council members?
One other thing, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Brock?
There are 6 events on here totaling approximately $60,000 that fall under Richland 2's purview. My question is, if we were to cut these events, because, again, Richland County operates on a $300 million annual budget. It's not like they're hurting for money. I get my tax bill every year. I see how much money goes to the schools. Everybody else in this room does too. That would be an area that I think we might could dial. If you want to free up some funds for some other events, that might be an area you could cut back on, simply because they do have other funding sources available to them. On one sheet, on the initial sheet, it shows $10,000 request from the Blythewood, hold on. The Town of Blythewood Tournament of Bands from the Blythewood High School Band Boosters, $10,000. The recommended amount, 0. Why? Makes more than requested, okay? But then we look at the second sheet, and it's got them funded at $10,000. There's a disconnect there. So, I favor a cap. Now, what that cap number is, it doesn't have to be 10,000. It can be a bigger number.
Right.
I think that takes away some of the bias that some of these events may have. The larger events are going to be favored over the smaller events. That's just the way that's the way the ratios are going to shake out. If we fund all these events, then we're fully fund them and engage in deficit spending essentially. Then we're not going to have any money to bring in new events unless we cut some of these events in the future. Or so you take the hit later, or you take the hit now, or do we dip into our fund? Yes, we have $2 million in the general fund. Yes, we have $730,000 in hospitality fund. But if we go out and buy a $2 million piece of property, that money's gone. So, we have talked about this many times, that there's going to be some hard decisions that are made, and some of these organizations are not going to get what they want. But if you've been around 2-3 years and you're an established event, you should be able to make it. Case in point, Mr. McKendrick's point of the Artist Guild didn't get the money from the town, went out and sold sponsorships. Okay, what prevents somebody else on this list who, if they're requesting $25,000 and let's say they get 15, go out and make it up in sponsorships. Sell more tickets. It can't be, the onus cannot fall on the town to fully fund all these events all the time unless we want to be a town that throws parties every month. We're never going to grow. We're never going to bring the assets into the town that I believe the citizens want. And the survey will be a great indication as to what people are looking for. That'll be a great thing for us when we, get 700-800 surveys back, hopefully more, and then you can start to read patterns, and the surveys will tell us a story as to what the citizens of Blythewood, and outside Blythewood, quite frankly, because they consider themselves Blythewoodians too, what they're looking for.
But as sponsorships and stuff, that's understandable. In my point of view, that's been a 3 strikes rule, black, veteran, female, okay? So if you do a survey and it's disproportionate because the town of Blythewood is majority white versus black, you won't get the accurate, heartbeat that you really need to be feared for this town. So that's the only reason why I was asking to add that under NAACP/ethics, to add that and to find a fund for it, but I hear you.
we can only take the information that's given to us. If only, 800 people complete the surveys, then that's the data we have to work with. Ms. Hennigan? Yeah. Yes, ma'am, and I believe we're working on that.
Yep.
Yeah, my-
Yes, ma'am. It could, yeah. Yeah, no, well, you just get lesser points if you don't meet our objective. So if you are a Blythewood organization that wants to do something at Columbia Country Club, you would receive the minimum amount of points, or 0. They would get if they're having a concert, say, in the park, they would get the maximum points because you're doing the event right inside the town of Blythewood. That's right. Well, they would lose other points in other areas, yeah. Are they a nonprofit? Okay. Oh, the Range 4 Hope Foundation? Right, I don't think.
It's really
that's
just
good.
based on where the event is held.
It's just where it's held, but we could add criteria. Are you
We
okay?
did, yeah. We could add
I
for,
mean, and just another point system.
Well, that one's easily quantifiable
Yeah.
right there, because either you are or you aren't.
Yeah, that's right.
And
And-
located within the town.
Right. Yes. Yes, that's what our marketing contract will do. We're going to market it heavily to monetize it. But last year, we had on the docket, I think probably a concert every month from Mr. Phillips and his crew. Councilman Griffin tried to get us a concert. Those things were on the scale, but then COVID knocked them off, so people didn't want to hold, we couldn't for a while. So I think you're going to see it come back to that. Ideally, we want an organization to pay us a fee, and they run it, they keep their own profits, we're out of the business, but we get a fee to help maintain the amphitheater. So, good, those are good points. And we can add that other criteria, are they an in-town organization? You know, are you a nonprofit? Where's your headquarters, I guess we could call it, or whatever. Okay. Any other comments? So the issue at hand is we have $199,200 to spend, is what you're telling us. And then we have to decide how we're going to allocate it. If we use Councilman Brock's sheet here, we would have a remainder left over, right? 20
No, you're backwards. We have $140,000 to spend with $199,000 in requests.
yeah, that's correct.
So we're
$140,000.
$50,000 in the red if you funded everything at the full request.
Yeah.
And that doesn't take into account allocating any funds for future asset purchase.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
From this account, yeah.
So I believe, Mr. Mayor, the first thing we need to decide as a council is, are we going to set aside any funding for future asset procurement? And if so, at what level? And then that backs us down to the number we actually have, assuming we're operating on a zero-based budget.
And then you do a weighted distribution, right?
So
You could do that.
that's why in a previous meeting, I asked for 2 different sheets. One showing these infrastructure pieces, land purchase, those different items, and then showing what we got here to kind of toggle between the two,
Right.
because we're essentially, we're talking about that, but we don't even have numbers. We know a little bit more than the general public, but we don't really have those numbers to kind of look side by side and to develop a plan on how to use that excess funds.
Right.
Right. Now, does this provide you enough of what you intended?
I'll get with you offline because I have some issues with some of the point stuff. don't want to discuss on live, but I will discuss with you in private.
And I think I have previously, so, all those columns, I didn't print all that out.
Yes,
I
sir.
sent it to you in the spreadsheet so you can see it, just because it
Well, I
was
think
even
his
more
point-
confusing to see that on a piece of paper than, but I have it here. We can look at it electronically, or, y'all can review it individually, but, so just, so I can get that for you but,
Yes, I have it. I
Yeah.
have it.
Yeah, that's a valid point. What, the 300-pound elephant in the room that we're not talking about is, how much money do we want to raise for capital expenditures?
Right.
That's the number. You start off with $3 million roughly in the bank accounts.
all right.
Different colors of money, I get it. You got $3 million. We have a net surplus every year.
Right.
And what is it this year? You brought it up.
138,000, I believe, currently before any amendments.
Right.
Assuming that's going to happen every year, and assuming you got $3 million to start with, how much money are we going to spend on buying or improving infrastructure? We got to come up with that number. That would drive what Councilman Griffin's saying. These numbers
Right.
back into the number, like Councilman Brock said. So I think that's where we got to go. That's a do out, Sarah Lynn, if you can write that one down. We got to decide how much
Right.
capital acquisition fund we're going to set aside.
So just one example is put on the second sheet at the bottom, 20% of the total amount available of the 140 is 28,000.
So you would take 140 minus 28, so you got 112,000 that we can allocate to all these line items up here. And Mr. Brock did, and it comes up to 107.
Correct. Based on that example, yeah.
I get it.
Couple of other things to note. It's important to note that the monies that we receive from H-tax and to some certain extent, A-tax should increase as we do have a couple of new businesses coming online. Zaxby's will get a full year next year. We'll have a new hotel come online, hopefully August, September. Arby's, I believe, got conditional approval Monday night. The industrial complex will add money to the town coffers. So there will be an opportunity to, in the future, revisit some of this stuff. If we bump everybody down 25%, 30%, there'll be an opportunity to push them back up. One of the things I've noticed, and I've got a spreadsheet that I've been tracking, is that almost every single year with every single event, the requests continue to go up. They do. And I understand that. I want to start seeing where requests go down. And it shouldn't be town council driven, it should be applicant driven. We're doing very well. Thank you for supporting us. Instead of asking for 10,000, we're going to come ask for 7,500. That would resonate with me more than us coming in and cutting them versus them, or rather them coming back and saying, we don't need as much because you've given us $10,000 for the past 2 years. We've managed our money well, and now we don't need as much because we've been fiscal stewards of our event. That would go further to me than us having to come in there and say, well, these 4 events, instead of requesting 25,000, well, you're only going to start at 20 and we're going to work our way down. That's my 2 cents. Make it a little bit easier on us. I also think, though, Mr. Mayor, that if an event has a blowout event, we should not necessarily punish them because of their success.
So let's talk about the spreadsheets quickly. Are we in agreement with the weighting here? Is there any dispute about the point systems and how it's shaked out? So like, for instance, the LPGA golf tournament ended up being the highest vote getter or highest point qualifier because of the criteria we established earlier. Out of town, multi-day, nonprofit, huge tourism draw. They booked hotels with their athletes online before the tournament. So it met all of our conditions. So it ended up being on top. And since it scored over 22 points, that was a criteria the staff put on it, that anything over 22, you would get 100% of your request. If you had between 12 and 16 points, you would get 50%. If you had 17 to 21 points, you'd get 75%. And then you have the Blythewood High School band boosters. They make more than they request according to this sheet. So the recommended value for them was, contribution was 0. And so we should have sorted this by total points, but that's okay. So I had to, so number 1, number 2, I think was the Pioneer Days Rodeo. Correction, number 2 is Queens of the Castle girls basketball, and that's a first-time event. They've asked for it before. We funded it. They turned it back in because they had to cancel it due to COVID. But the potential to draw, and just looking at other basketball tournaments that have occurred over the years, they draw 20-some teams in, they stay for 4 days, so it, again, meets the criteria. But if you were to nitpick and split hairs, Westwood's not in the town of Blythewood, so they would get a ding on that category. But the hotels are, and the restaurants are, and the park is.
I would like to dispute that, Mayor, because, Blythewood Historical Society Museum is $5,000. I was wondering if we could propose a separate entity, again, standing on behalf of the NAACP members, to have funds allocated, added to the list, so that we can have funds allocated as such, and not just for Black History Month and the Historical Society. Black history is not just only in Black History Month. We experienced Black History yesterday and
I'll get you in touch with the Historical Society Board President. Yes, ma'am, and y'all can, absolutely right, you can discuss with her, because she does a lot of different promotions and programs over there.
Mr. Mayor, I do not agree that first-time events should be funded at 100%. I think that they should be funded at most 50%. And according to this, the Westwood, not to single out the Queens of the Castle basketball, but they scored 20, and that would be 75%. According to your using the point ratio, which I don't like all of the point, the metrics there.
Okay.
But I mean, on the flip side, you've got Pioneer Days at Blythewood Rodeo, first-time event, 100%, but yet it only reflects a 50% funding. You know, I'm okay with that. I like the golf tournament, 50%, first-time event. Obviously, Women's History, Black History Month, Veterans Day celebration, cultural events, that's apples and oranges. Those should all be funded at 100%. Like you can't.
Yeah, he said he's gonna move those
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yes. So, I think we're on the right path with this.
I just, the 50% is drastic to me. What we run into and the danger is, let's say we did that, and then these events come back and say, I can't do it for 50%.
Well, then
lose.
then we can override.
Okay.
But then everybody's gonna come back and say that.
Everybody's going to come.
Well, they have to show it to you, but when they,
You know, Mr. Williamson and I talked about something that, that a lot of other municipalities and towns do. We give people money up front. Most municipalities do what, Mr. Williamson? They give their money on the back end. You come in with receipts,
That's correct.
and you get the money after the fact.
Well-
Have we ever thought about doing that?
well, we've had events that said they couldn't do it without the upfront marketing money in the past. The larger ones probably could do without, the ones who maintain balances and, like, you're trying to give Westwood High School, Queens of the Castle girls basketball. This goes to their boosters, who then do the marketing and the advertising. I'm not sure if they would have that money on hand or not. It's something we could look at, sure. I'm sure the rodeo, could do their expenses up front and then bring it in the back end. Or perhaps you, like you said, when you have your max award, then you give half of that max up front and the other half. Now we do what, 80-20?
80-20.
We give 80% up front and 20% at the back, after the receipts come in.
Just to move things along a little bit, what I can do is just create some more spreadsheets based on what y'all discussed, like the 75% cap, and kind of go back and forth in email and get as close as I can. But it would be good to know if there is a kind of idea about how much to set aside for land purchase, because that would be, if there is an agreed upon amount there, then that would be helpful to then play with the numbers a little bit to get to that, the goal. If we did 20%, then, the goal would be to hit the 112, 498. If we can agree, that would be helpful, but I can also have some different scenarios, whether it be 20% or 10% or something too.
Right, yeah, just column. This is 75%, but you got to block out the ones who have on the lower end.
Yeah, we'll take those out, but just for the land purchase portion,
Yeah.
just to kind of, if there's anything that we can kind of take off the top before we even get to addressing the events, that'd be good to.
I mean, well, we got to have that number. And see, right off the
Yeah.
top of my head, 3 million sounds right to me, because if you just look at the parcels of land that are available for sale around here now, they're hovering around the $2 million mark. With the exception of Fairfield County, that's $450,000 for that 60 acres or whatever it is. But, so 2 million, and when you buy it, you got to develop it immediately for use. So that'd be another million, so that's $3 million set aside that somehow we got to get to. Now, if you do it just based on the surplus, it's going to take us 20 years to get there.
Right.
So you're going to have to use some of our existing funds.
Right.
When I say they, if we decide to do that, to execute maybe half and finance the other half, or whatever. But that's what we got to come to.
Right.
Otherwise, we're just kind of estimating and setting aside $25,000 a year, which is going to take you a long time to get to $3 million. Okay. So you're going to come up with a scenario list of, this is if we fund the optional ones, because some of them are not optional.
Right.
Like History Month,
Yep.
Christmas Parade.
So I'll work on one that takes that out, and then do like a 75% cap based on percentage versus a flat cap, and add one. I modify the score sheet to add whether the organization is in town or out of town, and then
Rerun those
and then yeah, and then look if there are, I can do some different scenarios for land purchase set aside, whether it be, how much of this amount do we want to even set aside? I know it's obviously not going to exclusively come from this, but do we want to set aside annually a certain amount?
Well, when you run that column, when you do that weighted system, 75%, you're going to have a number at the bottom.
Right.
And then the number below that would be, this is what you have for capital set aside. And then you run 50%, you'd have a bigger
Okay,
number.
all right, so we can do it
Yeah,
that way.
do
So
it
we
that
do
way,
that
yeah.
first, and then whatever remainder goes to capital, then we don't have to
can
take that off the
decide.
top. Okay, I wasn't sure, priority-wise, if you wanted to do the land purchase set aside before that, but, okay,
This will give us an idea how much we're saving for land
Right.
purchase.
okay,
And what risk we're willing to take.
right,
Does that make sense?
yes, thank you.
So these are all in question on page 11 then, based on what you just said. These may change. Okay? Page 12? We're almost there.
I think we need to jump to page 14.
14,
14.
sorry, I'm sorry. 13, we looked at 13. Those numbers will change, then we move to 14. Page 14.
Okay, and this is where we will have some more discussion on the second work session with the Doco Manor. But you can see, first off, facility rentals, you can see the drop that occurred based on COVID. And, but we anticipate that coming back strong for 2022, based on the reservations we've gotten so far. And then you see the transfers that we've already discussed previously. Expenditures are for, the salaries are just paying for Steve and Jonna. I added a little bit for training for them. Let's see. That's about it for page 14. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. Thank you, Julie. So yes, here is where we could add the 4,800 that was added to the MPA contract to pay for Doco Manor advertising.
So maybe line 370 should be advertising / marketing.
Yeah.
We could just, okay.
Yep.
We can go into more detail about where the advertising dollars are spent next time. That 18,000.
almost half.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a conservative estimate, but, I mean, that's just,
Yeah, if you average the two previous years,
Yeah.
it comes out to about 125, so, but one of them was drastically, that was COVID, so.
right, just anticipating that it's not.
Probably need to average 131 and 228. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and then make that, now, what is that?
I'll work on that with
Okay.
Steve, if we need to change
About
that revenue
175.
amount, and see if we can get a more accurate estimate. Say it again. Yeah. Correct.
Well,
Okay, so, oh, what do you mean?
not quite.
Yep.
Well, we still have capacity limits, right, Steve? I mean, aren't you enforcing?
No, the state is not enforcing it.
Okay, well, that's a decision we're going to make. We're going to talk about the mask ordinance on Monday night, so that'd be a good time to talk about it. Yeah, don't use the 64.9 as a, because that was an anomaly. That's a black swan event, so, yeah.
Also, Mr. Williamson and Mr. Hasselrock, I'd like to know why actuals from 19 at 228 dropped to 131 the very next year. I'm just curious. That's a nearly $100,000 drop. No.
No, this,
Fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20. No. That's not COVID. 20 to 21's COVID, but not 19 to 20.
Well, the end of fiscal year
Okay,
20.
okay, my bad. I'm confusing calendar date versus fiscal year. That's June 30th, 2020. Okay. All right, COVID, partial COVID. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of it,
right,
and
so
that's a
those 2
question
years
I
of
just had
COVID.
for Steve, is like, where were we before COVID dropped? And it was, like 120 in February, and then it was 131 by June 30th. So
Okay,
there's a
yep,
bit,
okay,
it was
all right.
anticipated to continue on.
about 250 or something.
And,
yeah. Okay.
and then it all came to a halt. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's right, June of 2020, that's right, 6:30.
so why are we not assuming we're going to have another great year now? Well, I mean, it starts 1 July. Fiscal year. I mean, you were on track for 250, you said, before COVID. Why would we not be right back, beginning 1 July to next June, be doing 250,000 in business? Okay. Okay. That's fine. Yeah,
Yeah, and we can talk
I'm like
about-
you, I don't want to overestimate it, and then you're going to have
Right.
more in the back end to pay to make up the shortfalls.
So, yeah, I mean, just to touch on briefly, so what we've got to show you is how the rentals of the park affect the rentals here, and how that, where the shortfall occurs there. So the 125 is not, is reduced not exclusively by COVID. But yeah, I mean, we could still potentially bump that up. We can look at it to get a more accurate amount just based on what's come in recently on reservations.
Yeah, we're, absolutely.
We've discussed that
Yeah,
before.
we
We've
have.
been
We've-
discussing.
We've discussed that before.
That's right. Yeah, no, you're right. We have quite a few ideas that we're getting ready to bring to, yeah, you're right on. We've seen this as a problem. You probably heard us talk about it before. An incentive for the bride to rent the amphitheater if she's gonna, and then, you know, what does that look like? And how do we go forward and monetize it to balance it? Or maybe there's a percentage. Maybe it's a sliding scale. I know you gotta go. It's a sliding scale, whereas you show us that you made 15,000, you pay us, 20% as opposed, yeah, or as an example. Or your grant is reduced by that amount. So we cover his expenses, you're right. Okay. We gotta write that one down. Manor and park fees. I'm gonna go over these dues outs. Huh?
I'm working on
I know. But we just gotta, he's got a proposed contract, we're supposed to look at it and let you all see it. There's gotta be a better way to do it, to get that covered. Okay?
Okay. If we move on to page 15. Wages for manor event staff. You can see we're almost at our budget right currently. But the number has historically come from 25% of facility rentals, so that's where that number comes from. So, if the rentals increase, then we would see.
It's safe to say that this page is all driven by the number of events in the
Right.
manor. So if we bump that 125 up to 175, a lot of these numbers will follow suit.
Correct.
So it's not just a straight $50,000 addition to the bottom line.
That's right.
That's pretty self-explanatory, yeah.
And one thing we don't have on the wages for this, that we have on the salaries for staff, is any kind of COLA increase. Currently, have not done that in the past, but has been
I think
brought
I
up.
asked.
We added-
Didn't I ask you, we
Yep.
done last year, but I asked about a 1.3 COLA on there.
Yes.
Didn't we
This
go
time
I have a
from,
note about that, but
didn't we
Yes,
go
sir.
from $10 to $12 an hour?
No, we went
Yeah,
12 to 15.
Yeah, 15.
15.
I thought it was.
It's 14 or 15?
Okay.
Okay, so we went up $2 on 12. That's about 18% increase ballpark. I'm sorry, but a 1.3% COLA increase to somebody making $14 an hour is insulting. It's not going to move the needle. If you're going to give them a raise and bump them up $1, I mean, not 1.3%. I mean, come on.
You're right, but we just base that on the state.
No, I
Yeah,
understand that.
that's what that
but-
come from, was the state, but
Yeah.
the whole idea is to go $1 or $2. That's what I asked last budget, session.
$14 an hour is pretty decent wage, though, I think.
Yeah, well,
So, but not,
Go
if
back
we're
to
going to
it.
go up, we'll go up. Not 1.3%.
trade in.
Yeah, salaried employees
I'll
probably
come
should be
down there.
1.3, hourly probably $1,
Yeah.
because it comes out to be much, okay. Because you gotta remember, a lot of those folks only work on demand.
Yep.
Whenever we have an event, Steve calls them,
An hour is
like
also,
me-
a dollar is also a nice round number, too.
there you go.
would you like just to
Do
add
a
in a
dollar.
dollar increase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Completely fine with that.
So that goes, Miss Julie, from 14 to 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Miss Julie, that goes from $14 to $15 an hour, or $1. Okay. Yes, 7-1.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Let's see.
Moving to 16?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see anything. And then these are the capital improvement fund for the manor. And you just see the transfer from H-Tax that was shown previously, and then how that will be spent. And then you have the fund balances. You can see there what the manor CIP fund is currently.
For our next budget meeting, Ms. Williamson, Mr. Hasrock, will you present your anticipated capital expenditures to us for review? Like if you want to replace the carpet, note that. I mean, every year it says carpet HVAC, it's kind of the same tag or description every year, but at some point, we actually do replace the carpet. At some point, we need to replace the roof. You know, I understand we're budgeting for it, we're writing the check every year, but when are we
Well,
gonna
we're not.
expend those funds?
We're gonna start writing a check
Yeah.
every, I don't think
Okay.
we do that now.
Okay,
Same with vehicle acquisition,
yep.
all that. And then are we gonna auction the old vehicles off, or sealed bid, or trade them in? Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I took a notebook full of notes as follow-ups for next time. I'll just quickly do this for the good of the public, then we'll get out of here. Get a copy of the George Floyd Act and think about a committee for that. Gateway projects from the COG. Still got to discuss the park security manning after the gates and physical barriers are in place. Funding of the Blythewood Athletic Alumni Association. RCI inspections, monitor that in the future to see if that becomes a permanent party, which may be too hard to do. Memorial Day event, we got to discuss that on Monday night, too. I may just address it in my comments, mayor's comments, and see if any churches have replied. Did they tell us they have veterans buried? And so we start putting that plan together. Aid to subdivisions, you owe us an answer on that, Mr. Williamson, what the statute says about that. We're still have to discuss aid to our local businesses under the ARP funding. So I'll need to know when that funding is, I know it's supposed to be broken up over 2 years, but when are they going to write the checks to municipalities? Because like Councilman Sloan Griffin said earlier, like to have these things ready to go, shovel ready to use a term, so when the money comes, we execute. Yes, ma'am, were you going to say something? Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. So we have time to plan and look at, make sure it's within the law, we're doing the right things. Are we going to implement an overall cut for capital expenditures? And you're going to bring that chart that's going to show that. We are allocating more to the Manor budget. The $4,800 from MPA Strategies, for instance, would be one of those that we move over. I think Councilman Brock, I got to tease him, said something about throwing parties every month in the town. Well, I like parties, and I think it meets, I think tourists like parties too. So, okay. Okay, we've talked about potentially another nonprofit, NAACP, applying, and we'll talk more about how to do that. Like, what event is a local chapter going to do that will then qualify, like these events do for the town, and something we can absolutely do. Looking, again, the legalities of the ARP funding, paying for this manor and offsetting all those lost business revenues. How much are we going to set aside? Is it $3 million that I've offered, or should we say $4 million and start tracking how we're going to get there? We need to get Richland County School, either we need to go before Richland County School District trustees and talk to them about the funding of these events. I'm pretty sure they don't do it for some legislative reason, because a lot of these monies go to booster clubs because the kids live in our towns and we support it. I don't know if the school system can do that or not, but I do want to ask them about it. If one of them likes to come to our meeting and entertain us, or we go to theirs, either one. And then move the cultural events out of the funding, and almost like that other line item we had for the Historical Society. And then lastly, the manor and park fee schedule debate. How are we going to charge people when they come here to make sure we're not losing revenue? For a $1,000 concert, we're losing a $5,000 wedding. So, okay. Did I miss anything, council members, that was on your minds? Okay, well, thank you all for your time on this Saturday. And any closing comments from the public? Yeah.
He said Saturday.
I know, feels like a Saturday, doesn't it? Oh, yeah, we can talk about that individually.
And I'll get with you about, and other members about my questioning on the point system.
And that can be modified any way y'all see fit, as long as it's objective in nature, and like he said, it's, you're in town or you're not. So you get a point, you don't. You're nonprofit or you're not. Those kind of things is what we really need to track.
Yeah, we can just create another spreadsheet based on
Okay.
Second.
It's been probably motion seconded to adjourn today's budget workshop. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We're adjourned. You go right ahead.